Hey guys, welcome to part 5 of What If Naruto Was Trained by Kakashi Before Academy. If you enjoy the video then like, share and subscribe and also comment your thoughts as it inspires me to make more such videos, and remember to check out my playlist section for other interesting stories. So let's get started. Chapter 16. Forget. His fist impacted into his doppelganger's face with a thunderous crash, making it explode into a cloud of smoke. He quickly crouched low, ducking under two sword slashes that clashed against each other from two more clones, and jumped high, landing a spinning kick into the first one's neck and grabbing the second one by the face before driving it into the ground. Both disappeared in another cloud of smoke, which he quickly dispelled with a wave of his hand. A platoon of clones stared back at him, some seeming uncertain while a few others looked determined. The original balled his hands into tight fists and body flickered forward, leaving the first clone barely any time to react before he was sent flying back, toppling a tree along the way. Before any others could react, the blonde slammed his foot into the ground and the remaining clones were skewered by chain links shooting up beneath them. No, that's not enough, he thought with a growl. He was angry, so impossibly angry. At who though? At Hiruzen? At Orochimaru? At himself? No, he was angry at the world. Why did everything have to be so damn hard? Why did everything have to be so complicated? 3 years. It's already been 3 years since he'd decided to start this little journey of his. 3 years since he'd decided to meet all the Biju. 3 years since he'd decided to find out more about the world. 3 years since he began his research to find Kyuubi's other half. And yet, he felt like he was no closer to accomplishing his goals. Well, that wasn't true. He'd met Gyuki and Chome, along with Kurabi and Fu. He didn't know whether it was due to a weird twist of fate that he'd met those two by accident, or if Jinchuriki were just naturally drawn to each other. But nonetheless, he was a quarter of the way there. Number 1 through 6 will be found, one way or another. That, he was sure of. And now, his sole goal was to find that snake, Orochimaru. And after making him suffer for everything that madman had put him through, he would then find that mask, and he'd rip that soul from the Grim Reaper by force if he had to. While Naruto was busy terrorizing his clones, Kakashi was up in a nearby tree, lounging on a branch with a book in hand. Ma, calm down. I can't calm down. The boy growled back heatedly. I'm weak. I'm much too weak. I can't stay at this level that I'm at now. He stared at his open palm with anger clearly written across his face before closing it tight. If I do then. Kakashi raised an eyebrow and glanced at him. You can't take on the world on your own. Trust me, many have tried. It's a learning process. Don't worry, you'll get better eventually, he said while flipping a page. But when was eventually? He couldn't afford to be wasting time. Why did he feel such anxiety for the future? Why did it feel like time was already running out? The thought filled him with even more rage. No, eventually wasn't good enough. With a deep frown, he turned towards his teacher. Kakashi-sensei, please fight me. Kakashi looked up at his student with a bored look. Is this really the time for that? He received no reply, and the blonde showed no indication to back down. With a sigh, he pushed himself up and pocketed his book before hopping off his tree branch. I guess he just needs to cool off a little. Naruto watched as he calmly approached him. He wasn't taking him seriously, he could see it plain as day already. He had his hands in his pocket and he could see the ever-present bored look in his eye. At least he wasn't reading his book, so he wasn't completely disparaging him. Come at me. Naruto balled his hand into a fist and shot forward towards his left flank. Kakashi followed him with his eyes, and brought up a hand to counterattack, but Naruto unexpectedly vanished in a body flicker and delivered a strong fist aimed at his cheek, which was hastily blocked by his forearm. Kakashi's eye narrowed as Naruto grit his teeth in anger before spinning in midair and sent a kick, which was easily avoided as Kakashi leaned back. He quickly jumped back to create some distance before vanishing from view again after his feet had barely touched the ground. It's been a while since I've fought him, Kakashi thought as he avoided another glancing blow. He was a lot stronger than the last time they fought a year ago, and a lot had happened since then. Naruto had graduated, become a fully fledged ninja, and had undergone more training under Tomoda and by his own self. His hits were a lot more powerful, and he was making liberal use of the body flicker. Not bad, but not enough. Naruto appeared in front of him once more, but before the blonde could react, he was sent flying by a punch to the gut by Kakashi that made him spit out saliva and sent him high up. He immediately recovered in mid-air however as a clone appeared next to him and grabbed onto him, spinning him around a few times and launching him back down at Kakashi. Kakashi jumped back as Naruto landed in his previous position, cracking the earth and creating a crater. Deciding to switch from defensive, Kakashi was upon Naruto before he could blink, making him quickly cross his arms to protect his chest as he was kicked into a tree. The blonde lowered his head when Kakashi's fist impacted where it was just a second ago and jumped away as the masked man immediately took pursuit after him. Wind slash. Naruto pulled out a kunai from his pouch, channeling wind chakra through it and sending out a wide slash towards Kakashi. His eye widened as he was struck by the wind blade, but his body turned into a wooden log that got split in two by the attack. Naruto frowned and looked around the eerily quiet clearing. Kakashi was masking his presence and hiding somewhere out of sight. Going through another flurry of hand signs, Naruto brought both of his arms close to his body before flinging them out on either sides of him. Whirlwind. A giant gust of wind flooded the area from the action, making the surrounding trees groan in protest before snapping and toppling. A figure shot out from one of the trees and clashed kunai with Naruto. The blades met as the two traded blows, dodging and deflecting in a shower of sparks with Kakashi slowly pushing the boy back. Naruto ducked low under a kunai swipe as a shadow clone appeared behind his teacher, who delivered a flying double kick at his back. Kakashi stumbled forward and was immediately clothes-lined by the original. Much to his surprise though, the Kakashi in front of him turned into electricity and shocked him to his knees. Naruto grit his teeth and attempted to regain control of his spasming muscles, but was soon wrapped up in metal wires by his teacher, who landed in front of him with nary a sound. Kakashi looked down at him with his hands holding the bundle of metal wires. Had enough. Naruto struggled against the bindings, before suddenly stilling. Kakashi tilted his head in confusion as his student closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Thinking he had finally calmed down, Kakashi moved forward to free him, but was caught off guard when Naruto strained against the binds with renewed vigor. Wind chakra burst forth from his body and cut the wires to shreds, making Kakashi's eye widened as Naruto was upon him once more. A swipe to his head was dodged, followed by a high kick, which was countered by a leg sweep from the taller man. Naruto fell to the ground but immediately caught himself by rolling and avoiding a stomp from Kakashi. He jumped, using Kakashi's shoulders as a springboard with his hands and landed behind him in a crouch. Kakashi tried to bring down his kunai on the blonde, but his hand was immediately kicked away making him drop the weapon. Both continued this exchange, hits, counters, blocks, dodges, both moving like barely distinguishable blurs. Eventually, Naruto's concentration slipped as Kakashi turned the ground to mud, making him trip and attempt to keep his balance. Naruto brought an arm up to shield himself as Kakashi flew through hand signs and launched a fireball at him. The ball exploded upon impact and sent him flying, making him skid along the ground. The masked man appeared on top of him and slammed his face into the ground by grabbing the back of his head. "You've certainly improved," Kakashi said as he held his student down. "But you're acting too reckless. What did I tell you about fighting people stronger than you?" Naruto slammed his hand into the dirt and tried to push his face up, struggling against Kakashi's grip. In return, Kakashi applied more force, but he looked at his downed student in worry. What next? Chains. Clones. Naruto's eyes flashed a dangerous red, and with newfound power, knocked Kakashi away with a loud roar. Kakashi flipped in midair and landed safely on his feet as hot wind picked up and began to swirl around the Jinchuriki. The Jonin frowned in worry as he shielded his eye from the energy emanating from the blonde. Isn't this taking it a little too far? Naruto's now red eyes fixed themselves onto him and, with a snarl, disappeared in a burst of speed. Kakashi brought his hand up and caught the blonde's powerful fist, a shockwave uprooting the grass behind them from the action. Kakashi had to quickly let go and jump back as a red tail made of corrosive chakra struck the space he was previously standing in. He's fast, Kakashi thought as he pulled up his headband. Naruto followed him relentlessly, a giant red claw attempting to grab him midair, but Kakashi reacted faster and moved behind him. The feral boy swiped at his teacher, making Kakashi duck under the moving limb and grab onto his forearm. He spun him around, destabilizing him and struck him in the face launching him several meters away. But that wasn't enough. Naruto used the momentum of the throw to regain his balance in the air. Landing on four legs, the blonde blitzed from view once more, his speed increasing further. Kakashi narrowed his eyes as Naruto appeared behind him, arm drawn. The Jonin sidestepped, making Naruto's fist crash into the ground as a result, but the red chakra seemed to have a mind of its own and elongated, detaching from the boy's limb and catching him in its giant red fist. Kakashi grunted in surprise as the chakra ate away at his clothes and skin. The fist flailed around, hitting the ground once, twice, thrice before throwing him away like an insect. Kakashi tumbled a few times before sliding into a crouch. I wasn't expecting that, Kakashi thought as he carefully watched the Jinchuriki. Naruto roared again and was once more after him, ready to lop his head off with his claws. Kakashi was faster though as his foot struck him squarely in the cheek. Naruto's head snapped back, but his body still struggled forward, trying to overpower the blow. Kakashi jumped high and Naruto blocked another kick aimed at him, but wasn't quick enough to avoid the second one that made him slide back several meters. Kakashi ran forward, coming face to face with his student. Naruto sent a punch to his head, but Kakashi crouched below the blow and nailed the blonde under his chin. Naruto was sent sailing up and was struck in midair by a double-handed hammer fist from an earth clone of Kakashi. He impacted with the ground once more, and this time took a few seconds to recover from the blow. Putting a hand on his knee, he used it as leverage to push himself up. Kakashi landed in front of him, making Naruto glare back at him. His red cloak disappeared, but his red eyes and canines remained, showing the masked man his lingering feelings of anger within him. Naruto launched forward and used the back of his hand to redirect Kakashi's defensive punch. The blonde sent one of his own, and Kakashi raised his knee to block it. Growing frustrated, Naruto growled and slammed his forehead against Kakashi. The Jonin showed no sign of backing down however and met the headbutt with his own. Both struggled for a few seconds, slitted eyes scowling into mismatched eyes. Naruto sent a left hook, which was batted away and received a jab to the face making him stumble back. Kakashi stepped forward, getting into his defense, blocking a double strike from Naruto and retaliating with a kick to the side of the leg. Naruto fell to one knee, before getting sent flying by a spinning kick to the face. Kicking himself back up, Naruto cocked his fist back and shot it forward, a compact ball of wind launching from it. Kakashi slammed his hand down and erected a mud wall for protection. The blow impacted with the wall and cracked it, and Naruto took the opportunity to create a dozen clones that rushed Kakashi from all sides. The scarecrow expertly dodged and weaved around the clones, making short work of them and dispelling them one by one. Now, Naruto built up his chakra and overloaded his limbs with wind energy. Crouching down low, gusts of wind whipped around him as the air became denser. Shooting forward, Kakashi's eye widened as Naruto seemed to glide across the floor before delivering a devastating kick to his torso. Iammer. Kakashi managed to block it in time, but wasn't prepared for the blunt force as he stumbled to the side. Naruto landed and immediately followed up with a second strike, just as powerful as the previous one, however Kakashi was prepared for it this time and caught it with his hand. Jumping high up to finish his three-hit combination, Naruto back-flipped and sent one final bicycle kick, powered by wind chakra propelling his foot forward. Kakashi crossed his arms protectively and let out a grunt as the blonde's foot crashed into his defense. Kakashi's knees buckled as the ground exploded around them from the force. The dust picked up, covering the area and shielding both fighters from view. Kakashi maintained his guard, waiting for any signs of sneak attack. All was silent. Before long, the dust cleared, and the masked man cautiously lowered his guard once he saw his student, sprawled on his back on the ground. He raised a forearm and watched as his limb trembled slightly from the trauma the attack had caused. He walked forward and approached the panting blonde who had his eyes squeezed shut from exertion. That was some power just then. Naruto's eyes squinted open and stared up at the Jonin with poorly veiled contempt. He barely even looked ruffled. Not enough, he repeated again, for what felt like the 100th time today. Kakashi sighed as he lowered his headband, shielding his Sharingan from view. Naruto, you're stronger than I was at your age. You'll get stronger, so just be patient. There are no shortcuts for gaining power. Quote. Eventually, Naruto's breathing began to slow. Staring up at the sky high up above, he watched the clouds lazily go by. Why did the old man Hokage take away my headband? I thought I was important to this village. Kakashi's gaze left the sky and focused on his student below him. You are. That's why Hokage-sama did what he did. Naruto said nothing back, but no words were needed for Kakashi to sense his confusion. Suna has the Ikibi, Kakashi began. Iwa has two Jinchuriki, the Yonbi and the Gobi. Kiri has the Sanbi and formerly had the Rokubi as well, but he has since gone AWOL. Taki has the Nanabi, Kumo has the Nibi and Hachibi. And we, Konoha, have the Kyubi. Naruto blinked at that information. Obviously, he knew of the existence of the other tailed beasts and their respective Jinchuriki. But he never knew for sure which countries had which ones. Can you guess why I know all of this? It's because Jinchuriki are more than just regular shinobi. People fear them, and as such are used as weapons of war, fearmongering defense mechanisms, whatever label you want to put on it. It is said that a Jinchuriki with full control of its tailed beast is as dangerous, if not more dangerous than a cage. That is why when one disappears, it becomes a devastating loss for the village and shifts the balance dramatically. Kakashi leaned against a training post and crossed his arms. The major villages are filled with greed, and would never pass up the chance to attack and invade a weakened village. When you left, you not only deserted the place you swore to protect with your life, you also left it at risk and undefended. The Nine Tails might very well be Konoha's greatest sword and shield. And so, if word ever gets out that it's no longer in the village, then that is an invitation to start another war. Hokage-sama did what he did because you've been acting like an unpredictable ticking time bomb. The blonde remained silent. What was there to say? He never really looked at it that way. He knew that he was this village's weapon, but he never really thought past that. If a war started again, he would be on the front lines. So, it was important for him to be stuck within the village, where he had no chance of leaving. It was like what Kakashi had told him in Taki. "'Cause the slightest disturbance and I'm locking you in the room." Only this time, the room was the village. I see. Quote. So what now? Kakashi looked up at the foliage above them. Now, that's for you to decide. Quote. Naruto looked at the spot that the masked man had been standing in. But no one was there. Maybe he needed to start over. He wasn't a shinobi anymore. But that didn't mean that this was the end. He was still the village's Jinchuriki after all. Maybe he needed to do this the normal way. Trying to take shortcuts. That only led to bad things happening. He thought he was ready and tried to rush things, and yet, where did that leave him? His team was gone because he was too weak to protect them. Maybe it was for the best. He laid there for what seemed like hours, all by himself, with only the whispers of the leaves rustling to keep him company. He closed his eyes, and relaxed under the gentle lull of the grass and the sun. He arrived home late in the evening. Stepping in, he looked around his small dusty apartment as a sense of familiarity washed over him. It felt like he hadn't been here in such a long time, when really, it had only been a week. Walking over to his bed, he knelt down and slid a box out from under the frame. He opened it to reveal a little wooden toy, with a small drum attached to the top and two dangling beads on either side. Besides it lied a neatly folded blue scarf. He managed a small smile at the sight of them, and picked them up, holding them close to his chest. He felt at peace, clasping them close to him like that, what little he had left from his parents. He lied on his side, still clutching the items and curled into a ball on the floor. And soon, he drifted off to sleep. 6 weeks later. I'm dying. But, I'm alright with it. I've lived my life. I have no regrets. My vision is fading. I'm ready. What happened? I died. The light disappeared. But I'm still aware. What is happening? Everything is black. But I'm still conscious. How long has it been? Since I died. I don't know. I can't feel. I can't hear. I can't smell. I can't taste. I can't see. But I'm still conscious. It's been an eternity. When will this end? I am alone with nothing but my own mind to talk to. I am unaware, but I am conscious. I start to lose even that. Yet, I'm still conscious. I have spent so long unable to experience anything. Stuck within a rotting vessel. I begin to lose my memories of life. Yet I'm still conscious. My brain does not function anymore. I am confused in every moment I exist. Yet I'm still conscious. Comma. My brain is gone. Yet I'm still conscious. I am a lifeless life. Unable to think. Unable to feel. Unable to know. Comma. This is my eternity. What is consciousness? Where does it go after death? What if it doesn't? What if it stays? Comma. Comma question mark dot 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 question mark dot 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 question mark dot 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 question mark dot dot. Question mark dot 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 question mark dot question mark dot 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 question mark dot 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 question mark. Question mark comma dot dot question mark. Comma dot question mark comma question mark dot 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 question mark. Dot 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 question mark 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 dot 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 question mark. Question mark dot 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 question mark. Comma, 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 comma. I'm back. What happened? I died. And yet here I am. Something's wrong. My memories. They're leaving me. The faces I know. The melodies I like. My favorite food. My favorite place. My favorite person. They're leaving me. Why am I forgetting them? I don't want to forget them. Don't make me forget them. Don't make me forget them. Don't make me forget them. DON. M. D. O. T. M. A. E. M. E. F. O. R. G. T. T. H. E. M. Naruto woke up in a shock, tears streaming from his eyes. He felt cold and scared. But nobody is here. He wrapped his arms around his legs protectively, curling up into a ball. Why? Hiding his face behind his knees, he began sobbing into the night. He woke up, just the same as every other day. Except today was special. Today was his first day at the academy. He'd been there a couple of times before. Once to take an exam, and once to graduate. And from what he'd seen, it wasn't exactly his definition of fun. Sitting in a classroom, listening to the teachers droning on and on about things that don't really matter. But it's something that he needed to do. He graduated early before, and he very much doubted that he'd get special treatment a second time. So, with a sigh, he pushed himself off his bed and began getting ready for the day. The place looked exactly the same it did a year ago. He'd already made the arrangements with the academy to attend the next few years. With the approval of the Hokage, Naruto was placed in a class that would be graduating in 3 years, conducted by Iruka Umino, alongside Mizuki Tuji, the man he'd sparred with during his exam. Room 406. This was it. He pushed the door open, and peered inside. He was early, only a small handful of students were there, and the teachers had yet to arrive. Walking up the stairs and ignoring the curious looks he was receiving, he picked a random seat near the back of the class and closed his eyes. Who are you? His eyes opened again a few minutes later. The place was a bit busier now, and the chatter of the students filled the room. A boy with a white puppy lying on his head was standing before him. He had shaggy brown hair, feral eyes and red triangles on his cheeks. An Inuzuka. Quote, comma, quote. The boy frowned and tilted his head as the dog whined. Hello. You're being annoying, Kiba. What was that, Shikamaru? Kiba replied angrily as he turned towards the lazy boy. Naruto looked at said boy sitting a few rows ahead of him. That was Shikamaru Nara. He met him a year ago back at Ichiraku's. He even helped him with a personal dilemma. And the boy next to him was, Choji was it. And Akamichi. Looking around the room, he recognized a few faces, some he'd seen playing in playgrounds when they were younger, and some that he'd seen in passing. A face in particular caught his attention, a kid with black hair and black eyes. Sasuke Uchiha, brother of Itachi Uchiha. And if the confused looks he was sending his way was anything to go by, then the boy recognized him as well. Interesting, so he was in the same classroom as him. Seemed like all the clan heirs were put in the same year. A man carrying a binder walked into the classroom. Good morning, class. I hope you all had a good break and I hope you are all ready for a new year. The man, Iruka, Naruto guessed, placed the binder on his desk and smiled at the classroom. However, his smile left his face and was replaced by surprise when his eyes landed on Naruto, as if he had just remembered an important detail. Oh, that's right. We have a new student here today. He'll be joining us for the rest of the coming years. Could you come forward and introduce yourself? Naruto cautiously got up from his seat and walked to the front of the classroom. He stared at the students as they began to whisper among themselves, before looking down at the ground. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Oh boy, Iruka thought as he scratched his head. Ah, very good Naruto. Thank you. You may return to your seat. He watched as the blonde wordlessly walked back to his desk, before bringing a fist to his mouth and clearing his throat. Ahem. Right, so today we will start a refresher course that will briefly summarize everything that we've gone through last year. The rest was lost on the blonde as he drifted off within his mindscape. Naruto stared at the inside of his cage with a small frown. The Nine Tails was hiding deep within the cage, far out of reach. It appeared to not want to be disturbed. Standing before the great bars, he hesitantly raised a hand forward, passing it through the bars to check for any kind of resistance. When he was met with none, he dropped his arm back down before walking forward towards the lying figure of the giant fox. Kyuubi, Naruto said softly, stopping behind the great Biju. He struggled to find the correct words to justify his actions the last time they'd seen each other. I wanted to say, I'm sorry. He received no answer and took it as a sign to continue. I know you don't like being called by your name. You didn't tell me it yourself, so you don't trust me with it. I was wrong. Naruto's frown deepened as he looked down. I don't know what came over me, so please, forgive me. He waited a few moments, growing more and more restless as the seconds ticked by. Kyuubi, he said as he attempted to get closer. But before he could do any more, a feeling of vertigo came over him as he was forced out of his mind. With a slight jump, Naruto returned to the land of the conscious, making several students nearby look at him in a strange way. Ignoring them, he attempted to focus back on the lecture Iruka was giving. After what felt like days, but was actually only 6 hours, he was finally let out of the academy. He had to do 3 more years of this nightmare. He didn't think he could survive that. There was going to be some sparring matches tomorrow at least, to see what skill category everybody fell under. This would be a good opportunity to see what all the clan heirs were capable of. Who's that? Naruto thought as he glanced behind him. Somebody had been tailing him ever since he left the academy. He wasn't sure who it was, but regardless, he did not want to have to deal with anyone else. The blonde hopped onto a rooftop and picked up the pace. Alright, next match. Iruka looked down at his notes. He blinked and leaned closer to his paper. Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki. Chatter immediately picked up again as the students gossiped among each other. The newbie against the Sasuke. Isn't that unfair? One whispered. Sasuke-kun's gonna eat him alive. Another said to her friend. A small drop of sweat trailed down Iruka's face, concern being the main emotion he was feeling. But he didn't pick the fights, those were predetermined by the higher-ups. Will both fighters enter the ring? Sasuke walked up the sparring area in the middle of the classroom and cautiously watched as the blonde made his way over. He could not read him for the life of him. Was he excited? Worried? Bored? Happy? Scared? Who knew? Since the Uzumaki had been here, it was like his face was set in stone. Never changing, never twitching. Both stared at each other as the crowd quieted down. Iruka looked between both fighters, raised his hand before bringing it back down. Begin. Sasuke got into his fighting stance, the intercepting fist. However, he frowned when his opponent didn't move from his previous position. Aren't they supposed to, fight? A boy said after 30 seconds had passed. Truth be told, Sasuke didn't know how to feel. He didn't look threatening, but he felt threatening. The blonde made no effort to get into a stance. Was he taking him lightly? Quote. Having had enough of waiting, Sasuke decided to initiate the fight. He moved forward, both hands at the ready as he attempted to throw a jab towards the blonde. Thud. Before he knew it, a foot impacted with his cheek, catching him by surprise and launching him outside the ring, and Sasuke was left on his back, staring at the sky in confusion. What? Immediately, the crowd around them buzzed to life. Whoa, I didn't see him move. He defeated Sasuke without even trying. No way. Sasuke was probably just caught off guard. Sasuke slowly stood up, looking at Naruto in surprise as he nursed his cheek. That was blindingly fast. However, as fast as that was, he still managed to see what had happened. He had a feeling that he was strong, based on the fact that he was training at a very young age, but he didn't expect to get beaten so effortlessly. Most of his weight was on his non-dominant foot. He predicted where I would come from before the fight started and slipped by my defense without me even noticing. By starting with all his weight on one foot, he managed to react much faster as opposed to if all his weight was evenly distributed. Maybe he was the one that took him too lightly. Winner. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto returned to his seat, slowly followed by Sasuke. Ahem. Iruka coughed, attempting to rein in the chaos that had ensued in the classroom. His eye twitched when no student paid attention before taking in a deep breath. Quiet. The class immediately quieted down, making Iruka nod and look down at his notes. Next will be Choji Akamichi and Kiba Inuzuka. It was late in the afternoon when he was finally let out of the academy again. Stuffing his hands in his pockets, the blonde aimlessly walked around the busy streets. What would happen next? What was the next step? After the academy, what would he then do? His plan hadn't changed, he still needed the mask. So how would he go about it this time? He couldn't afford to go rogue again. He was caught once and got his ninja status revoked. He preferred not to think about what would happen if he did that again. The person from yesterday, who he now knew to be the Uchiha boy, was following him again, though he was making sure to keep his distance. Only this time he chose to ignore it. Whatever it was he wanted, he seemed to be hesitant to do anything but wait and muster up the courage for something. And Naruto was all too happy to pretend that nobody was following him. After a while, once he could not feel the creeping edges of somebody in his shadow anymore, he finally let his guard down and took a seat on one of the benches near a little park. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, taking in the cool night air. When he opened them again, he noticed someone else sitting next to him. A tall man, with broad shoulders and long white hair, held back by a horned metal forehead protector. Jiraiya. The toad hermit looked back at him. Hey, kid. Chapter 17. Isoptrophobic. The concept of a shinobi is a strange thing. Someone who was born inside a warrior village, trained as a child to take lives. Honing their skills to protect their place of birth, to be used as a weapon. To never ask questions. To always fulfill their duties. Only to die a miserable death, creating the foundations for the next generation to get caught in the same vicious cycle of meaningless slaughter. War has been ever present since the dawn of time. When chakra was given to humans, it was immediately turned against one another for their own personal gains. As a weapon meant to kill. 1, 2, 3 world wars, even before that during the clan wars, and again during the time of the sage. Ever since humans came to be, they have learned to love and protect. But with that selfish desire came war and conflict. To protect what you hold dear to you, one must cast aside what is needed to create peace. Yet they hold on to their feeble hopes that one day, things will change, that people will finally understand one another. Yet nobody ever takes action. Because deep down they know. They know that peace is nothing more than an unattainable dream. As long as humans had the luxury of independent thinking, then differences of opinions will arise. And with those come the need for conflict. But shinobi continue to kill each other without even knowing why. Not many even know the reason for the first wars, yet they still follow into their progenitors' footsteps. Why? Because it was programmed into them. From the moment they are born, they are told who's good and who's bad, not understanding that the enemies that they are ordered to kill are merely told the same thing, fighting to protect their village and families. Talking about peace while shinobi still existed with divided villages, clamoring for the blood of their enemies was an oxymoron in on itself. Fighting fire with fire only made the flames burn brighter after all. Was this all there was to life? An Oshio struggle to just stay alive. To wake up. To train your body. To fight. To kill. To do it all over again and again and again like a never-ending nightmare. Hoping. Yearning for a different world. For a change. But nothing ever changed. It was always just the same old war. People could have so many reasons to kill. For their own perverse desires, to prevent more deaths, for personal gain, revenge or to achieve a goal. But when did it become justifiable? Was one human life worth more than another? In the end, it was still a human life, the same as any other one. Why should humans be given the power to decide whether someone deserved to live or die? There was no way that he was the only one tired of this violence and this lack of empathy. Why does shinobi continue to live this futile life? What was the point of it all? Was life really so unfair? Which is why a daily maintenance of your tools is crucial for a ninja. A checkup of your items is important at the start of each mission. Make sure you have everything you'll need. At the end of every mission, it is fundamental to stock back up on your consumables, such as your kunai, shuriken, paper bombs and steel wires to name a few. A ninja is only as strong as the tools at his disposal, and survivability is only assured through how much you've planned ahead beforehand. An emergency med kit is always required. Naruto breathed a quiet sigh as his head rested on his palm. This has been a week of pure boredom. 2 years and 51 more weeks. He didn't think he had it in him to sit through all of that. He hadn't been able to train consistently since he began the academy, so maybe he could afford to send a clone in his stead. Well, if it isn't the consequences of your actions. Naruto nearly jumped as the Nine-Tails voice rumbled in his head. Kyuubi. The fox didn't reply, making him blink and hold a hand to his head. Had he imagined that? Kyuubi had never willingly spoken to him before, especially not from outside the seal. Maybe the lectures were making him go crazy. The doors to the hospital swung open, allowing the blonde to slowly walk in and through the lobby of the hospital. Making his way towards the receptionist, he stopped in front of her desk and waited for the lady behind the counter to look up from her computer screen. "Can I help you?" she asked. Naruto looked around the building, his discomfort clearly visible on his face. "I'm looking for Sho Ito's room." "Certainly." She sorted through her files and pulled a slip of paper out. "Room 245 inches. He made his way to the room in question. Staring at the door, he balled his hands into fists and shook his head, before knocking and opening it. Inside, the resident of the room started in surprise at the person that had just walked in. Naruto. The blonde took a moment to take in the scene in front of him. Gone were the tubes and machinery used to keep his teammate alive. He was awake and conscious, out of bed by the window of his room. His skin was healthier, almost back to his regular tanned complexion. In fact, besides the slight loss of weight, Sho looked just as good as he did a few months ago. He'd almost thought he was back to full health, were it not for the wheelchair he was sitting in. Sho placed his hands on the wheels of his chair and turned them around before slowly rolling himself a bit closer to his teammate. "What's wrong? Tora got your tongue," he said with a small smirk. Naruto bit his lip and looked to the ground, avoiding his teammate's eyes. Why was he smiling at him? Why was he acting like nothing was wrong? He should be yelling at him, cursing him for putting him in this situation. "Sho, I'm sorry." Sho observed the boy carefully. Something seemed different about him. No matter how hard he looked, he could not find any traces of the happy yet socially awkward teammate that he'd grown to know over the past year. Was this because of what happened with Orochimaru? With a sigh, Sho shook his head. "Look, Naruto, you have nothing to apologize about." He stared down at his lap, a small frown marring his face. "I wasn't myself. You did what you had to do. As for that request I asked from you, that was wrong of me to ask. I shouldn't have expected you to take on such a burden." Naruto nodded, seemingly uncomfortable with the topic. "How are you feeling?" the Jinchuriki asked the older boy. "Good as can be, I guess, considering," he replied, making Naruto wince. "What about you? Did Orochimaru do anything to you?" "I don't have a seal on me, if that's what you're asking." Sho brought a hand up and covered the black mark on his neck. "That's a relief. I was worried that he got you too with that." What is that?" he asked curiously, making Sho shrug. "I dunno. The doctors say it's some kind of weird seal. But some people messed around with it while I was sedated and put barriers around it." Naruto nodded, and the room fell into silence once more. "Naruto, they won't tell me anything in here, so I've been wanting to know," Sho said suddenly. "What happened to the rest of our team?" "Oh, that," Naruto started in a quiet voice. "We had a funeral for sensei." "I see," the brunette replied. "So Tomoda sensei really is." He fell silent after those words. "What about Yuna?" "She's missing." "Missing." The blonde nodded. "A tracking team went back to the site, but they didn't find her anywhere." "Do you think that she ran away? Or," he paused, "or that Orochimaru took her?" Naruto shook his head, making Sho look down in worry. "If that's true, then who knows what she's going through right now, or what's happening to her, damn it." he shouted, making Naruto jump a little. I hate feeling so powerless. Don't worry, Naruto said, making Sho look back up at him. Yuna is strong. You know that. Sho took a breath before offering him a weak smile in return. You're right, wherever she is, I bet she's giving them hell. The statement brought a small smile to Naruto's face, making his posture relax slightly. Taking a seat on one of the chairs, the two continued partaking in small talk. The Uchiha landed in a crouch on a tree overlooking the training grounds. Frowning, he scanned the large area before his eyes settled on a lone figure, sitting cross-legged under a tree. There he is. He'd been tailing him ever since the academy ended for the day. His curiosity for the blonde had grown with every passing day. Hopping down the tree, he slowly began walking towards his target. But doubt soon began to cloud his judgment. What was his plan here? He'd definitely never done anything like this before, and the blonde child didn't seem like the type to enjoy idle chit-chat. But he just had to do this. This boy, he was the same age as him yet carried himself like a shinobi. He looked down at the ground and shook his head. No, that wasn't just it. The blonde was powerful, sure, but there was something else there. He didn't care. He didn't care about his lineage. He didn't care that he was one of the last Uchiha. He didn't care that he was basically royalty. He hadn't given him any special treatment because of his status. And frankly, that was just what he needed. Someone that didn't pull his punches. His feet suddenly came to a stop once he realized that he was already next to the meditating blonde. Damn, he still didn't know what to say to him. Quote, comma, quote. Quote, comma, quote. Sasuke stood next to him for a few moments, waiting for anything to happen. But when his classmate made no indication to move or acknowledge his existence, he brought his fist to his mouth and coughed into it. Hey. At last, a reaction. The boy sitting in front of him slowly opened his eyes before looking up at him with an impassive stare. Well, not much of a reaction, but one nonetheless. The two stared at each other for what felt like eternity to the Uchiha. This is kind of sudden, but can you fight me? Quote, comma, quote. Sasuke began to grow nervous as the blonde continued to stare at him. Eventually though, he stood up and walked right past him. Sasuke whipped around and stared at the blonde's retreating back. He expected a lot of answers, but he definitely didn't expect to be outright ignored. Hey, wait. The Uchiha boy extended his hand to place it on the blonde's shoulder. Before he could even register it though, Naruto's fingers reached out and interlocked with his, pulling him forward and drove his fist into his guts. Sasuke's eyes opened wide as spit was forced out of his mouth and was sent back several meters. The boy coughed and rolled onto his side, clutching his stomach in pain. Naruto spared him one more look before walking away from the downed Uchiha. Sasuke took a minute to catch his breath, before sluggishly pushing himself back up into a sitting position. Rubbing the spot that had been struck, he looked up at his classmate that had gone back to practicing his katas. His style was unlike anything he'd ever seen before. It was like it had no consistency. Sometimes his strikes were loose, sometimes they were tight, and sometimes they were wild. He couldn't find any other way to describe it. It was like his form was constantly changing and adapting to some unseen situation. No, now that he watched closer, it wasn't inconsistent. Unpredictable would be a better way to describe it. At first glance it looks like it has no real form, but I can see that he's following some kind of pattern. He watched him practice some kind of combination a bit longer before pushing himself to his feet. Fine then, if he won't pay me any attention, then I'll just have to make him. Naruto stopped his kata mid-motion and turned to face the sound of approaching footsteps. The Uchiha stopped a few paces away, his determined eyes meeting the blonde's blank gaze. The last two times he caught me off guard, but I'll be ready this time. Sasuke got into his intercepting fist, frowning even more when Naruto still made no move to change his stance. A bead of sweat rolled down his cheek as the seconds went by with no movement. A small gust of wind blew a leaf towards their direction. It gently glided down, slowly floating to and fro, before finally touching the ground. As soon as the leaf hit the floor, Sasuke shot forward, pulling his arm back and winding up for an attack. He saw the blonde tilt slightly to the side, anticipating the hit, and Sasuke unexpectedly shifted his stance in a feint, suddenly going low for a sweep kick. Naruto backflipped out of harm's way, skidding to a stop and immediately slid to the left as the Uchiha threw a handful of shuriken towards him. The metal stars missed their mark and sunk into the trees behind. Sasuke ran forward once more, faster than Naruto expected, and jumped up, twisting and landing a high kick aimed at his face. Naruto crossed his arms protectively and skidded back, catching his ankle before Sasuke could pull it away. The Uchiha attempted to aim a strong punch at his face, which was caught with his other hand. Quote. In an impressive display of flexibility, Sasuke contorted his body to the side and aimed even higher with his free leg while his body was still airborne, forcing Naruto to let go of Sasuke's fist to block the second kick instead. Sasuke's hand landed on the ground, which he used to propel himself out of harm's way of the blonde. As soon as he landed though, he shot forward, once more engaging in close quarters. Naruto dodged a punch, blocked an elbow and deflected a kick before countering with a kick of his own to drive his opponent back. Sasuke recovered in midair and landed gracefully. Glaring at the blonde with determined eyes, he exhaled a slow breath to steady his heartbeat before flying through hand signs. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. Naruto's eyes widened slightly for a fraction of a moment as a ball of fire made its way towards him, not expecting a second-year academy student to know elemental jutsu yet. He used the body flicker to propel himself back, out of reach from the fire that burnt the grass and scorched the earth. Suddenly, from within the smoke came Sasuke, his fist extended as it made contact with the blonde's cheek. Sasuke's eyes widened as his punch landed, forcing the blonde's head to the side, but Naruto's feet didn't budge an inch from their position, much to his dismay. Quickly putting some distance between the two of them, Sasuke panted softly and caught his breath as he anxiously watched his opponent. Naruto's head slowly rotated forward. His eyes, unfazed, stared back at him, before suddenly growing colder as the blonde shifted his stance. Are you finally taking me seriously? Sasuke thought in anticipation. Naruto's body lowered slightly and his dominant foot slid back. Before Sasuke could react, the blonde ran forward, much faster than before, and delivered a right hook that snapped his head to the side and nearly knocked him unconscious. He stumbled back, but forced himself to remain standing upright. Naruto appeared in front of him once more, and Sasuke attempted to throw a punch, but Naruto dodged it at the last second and drove his knee into his stomach. Sasuke keeled over, and Naruto struck him on the back of his head, sending him flying away and impacting against the training post. He cursed and pushed himself up to a knee, one eye closed in pain. Standing back up, he weaved through hand signs again but failed to complete them as Naruto was upon him once more. Gasping in surprise, he interrupted his jutsu to send a fast side kick, but was shocked when the blonde seemed to disappear from in front of him and reappear right behind him in a burst of pure speed. Naruto used the momentum of the movement to deliver a devastating spinning kick to Sasuke's midsection. Gah! Pain flared up at the point of impact as the Uchiha crashed into the ground. Panting, he opened his eyes when the blonde walked towards him. He grunted in frustration and tried to push himself back up, but was forced back down by his opponent's foot. Learn when to give up, Naruto said, in the same apathetic tone as always, making Sasuke grit his teeth. TCH. The blonde ignored Sasuke's scoff and removed his foot off of him before walking back to his training post. He took a deep breath before once more getting into his stance and repeating the same movements that the Uchiha had seen him do when he first arrived. How did you get so strong anyway? Sasuke asked, one hand clutching his side as he watched him training. Naruto didn't reply, but Sasuke didn't really expect one anyway. Dusting his clothes off, he jumped to his feet and glanced to the side at a second training post a few ways away. He looked at Naruto, then back at the training post, then back to Naruto once more. Hey, I'm gonna practice here as well from now on, the brunette said. The Jinchuriki didn't even spare him a look. Do what you want. The window to Naruto's living room slowly opened, allowing a tall figure to jump inside. The man looked around the place before scratching his silver hair and closing the window behind him. The masked man looked around the dark room in puzzlement. Placing a hand on the wall, he slid it around haphazardly until he found the switch and flipped it on. The light was dim, nearing the end of its life and would soon need to be replaced. The place was messy. Dust covered most surfaces. Boxes and ninja tools were left lying on the floor. Dirty dishes were stacked near the sink. Who knows how long those had been sitting there. Books and scrolls were strewn over a small table. Kakashi walked to the kitchen and frowned when he opened the fridge. That smell. Most of the content inside were rotten, or getting close to it. He closed it and opened the pantry. Nothing was rotten in there, but it was filled with canned goods and other unopened non-perishables. He let the pantry door click shut and gave the room another once-over. Walking into the bathroom, he observed the state of it. Mold was forming in the corners. More apparently, the mirror fixed onto the wall had shattered. He squinted as he inspected the reflecting surface closer. That did not look like an accident. What are you doing here? Kakashi turned to the source of the voice in surprise. Oh, you scared me. He barely heard him arriving. That kid was getting sneakier and sneakier. Naruto raised an eyebrow. I scared you. You're the one that broke in. The man chuckled and looked around the room once more, before looking back at the boy. His eyes were dark and droopy, from a lack of sleep he assumed. Why don't we go for a walk? The two walked along streets, enjoying the nightlife as children and merchants alike ran around. Konoha had always been lively around this time. Kakashi glanced away from his book to the boy next to him, hands behind his head while absently staring up at the dimming sky. So, what have you been up to lately? Training, replied the blonde. Kakashi said. How's the academy going? It's boring. Yeah, I didn't spend that much time there myself, but that's how I remember it as well. He paused for a second. You are going, right? Naruto tore his eyes away from the sky to look at him. Yeah. Good. The two continued walking until Kakashi stopped next to one of the many food vendors selling some kind of fried meat. You want anything? The masked man asked after signaling to the vendor to get a plate ready for him. Yeah, ramen. Kakashi looked back at Naruto with an unimpressed look on his face. It's a barbecue stand. They have barbecue. Naruto looked at the stand in question with a small frown. Okay. No. Kakashi shrugged and ordered himself a meat skewer, which the merchant gladly gave to him. As they kept walking, Naruto looked at his teacher only to see that the skewer had already been consumed. How are you doing that? Kakashi hummed, pretending to not have heard him. Naruto's eye twitched, but he held his tongue. He wasn't in the mood to play that game with Kakashi. Commander. An Anbu dropped down from a nearby rooftop, a frantic air emanating from him. Kakashi raised an eyebrow and turned to face him, Naruto stopping as well a few paces ahead. What is it, bear? There's been another breach, the Anbu continued in a hushed whisper too low for Naruto to pick up, but whatever it was it made Kakashi frown. Iwa again. Really? The copy nin muttered. He gave a furtive look towards Naruto, who had already lost interest in the conversation and was now absently staring up at the sky. The Anbu member exchanged a few more words with Kakashi before nodding and disappearing into the night. Kakashi stood there, mulling over the information he'd just received before continuing on to catch up with his student. Naruto, he said, but was confused when he received no reply. Walking closer to him, he noticed that he was staring up at something. But when he looked up as well, he failed to see anything out of the ordinary. Naruto, you all right? He said as he placed a hand on his shoulder. Naruto blinked and snapped out of his daze, before holding a hand up to his head in pain. Yeah, just a headache. He said dismissively. Opening his eyes, he looked back at his teacher. Anyway, what was that about? It's nothing for you to worry about. More importantly, I heard that you met with Jiraiya-sama the other day. How'd that go? It went fine. Really? Kakashi asked curiously. That's it. Hey, kid. Naruto stared back at the taller man. Hello. Jiraiya scratched at his head. It's been a while. The blonde tilted his head and watched the man closely. He seemed nervous. What did a man so powerful have to be worried about? How've you been? Naruto blinked. I've been all right. Good. Jiraiya replied. The awkwardness was nearly enough to drown him. Here he was, talking to his student's traumatized son, after having rescued him from his ex-psychotic teammate. What a strange world they lived in. Listen, there's something I need to tell you. He turned towards the boy. It's about your teammate, Yuna. He saw his eyes widen slightly at that. As soon as we rescued you on that day, I sent a messenger bird back to Konoha requesting a tracking team to try to find your teammate. Unfortunately, that place is a bit weird. The chakra coming from there makes the Aburame bugs act all crazy like, and the following rain made it a near impossible task to pick up anything. They searched the entire facility as well. Quite a few rooms were protected by privacy seals that the Byakugan couldn't see through, but all of them were eventually dispelled. And the man shook his head. Nothing. We weren't able to find neither hide nor hair of her. It's like she just vanished. Naruto squeezed his fist tight in frustration. Do you think she's? The Sannin shook his head. It's hard to tell. We didn't find her corpse anywhere, so who knows what could have happened. He watched as the boy's demeanor fell, a sigh escaping his lips. Sometimes, no news can be good news. So don't lose hope, she's probably still out there, fighting. Sounds like Yuna alright. That guy used to be your teammate, right? One of Jiraiya's eyebrows rose in curiosity. That's right. Sorry, but next time I see him, I'll kill him. The man fell silent. What his teammate had done, what they'd found in that lab, it was also unforgivable, and it pained him to see what the man he once considered his friend had become. I can't blame you, kid. Though, you might have to train a bit more first. He said with a small smile in an attempt to make a joke. It soon fell though when he received no reaction from the Uzumaki. Silence fell upon them again, and both sat watching the citizens walk by. Orochimaru wasn't always like this, you know, Jiraiya said, gaining Naruto's attention. Sure, he always looked weird, and he had his faults, but he used to be a kid just like everybody. Quote, quote. Orochimaru went through a profound change after both his parents were killed. And that's when he became obsessed with forbidden jutsu. I don't know if he was trying to resurrect his parents or to wreak vengeance on the village that he held responsible for their death. My parents weren't killed, so, he trailed off. Naruto frowned. He wasn't really all that interested about the man that had abducted him and his team. Regardless, he continued to listen anyway. I was accused of not being able to understand anything about him or his feelings. Perhaps he was right, and I didn't understand a thing about him after all. Jiraiya paused and looked up at the sky, a pensive look marring his face. Even I can see that there is entirely too much hate in this shinobi world of ours. Too much hate, Naruto repeated. I've wanted to do something about all this hatred. I'm just not quite sure how to go about it as of yet. But I truly believe that eventually the day will come when all people will understand one another and live in harmony. Quote, quote. That's stupid. Jiraiya gave a boisterous laugh, catching the blonde off guard. Ha ha ha. Well, that might be true. It does sound like a fool's errand, doesn't it? Jiraiya smiled and looked down at the ground. Though, I'd be interested to hear why you think it's stupid. Hatred is, well, it's just something we have. We can't do anything about that. What do you mean by that? You want everybody to be united, to understand one another. But no matter what we do, there'll always be people with different values, different religions or different visions. Your idea of peace might be different than someone else's. Jiraiya nodded, agreeing with the words of the blonde youth. That's right. As long as those differences still exist, hatred exists as well, and this peace will never be achievable unless you force it on them. But then would that still be considered peace? Jiraiya chuckled. Hey, you know, you're pretty smart for your age. Despite that, his smile remained on his face as he looked over to the Hokage monument. But you're not wrong. In fact, I've thought the same thing many times. If you know it's impossible, then why are you still trying? Because if I don't try, who will? Naruto had trouble seeing the logic behind that, but he did find it admirable to see how passionate that man was about his dream. Welp! Jiraiya exclaimed as he clapped his hands once and stood up. I think I'm gonna go hit up the bathhouses. Wanna come with? Quote, quote. Right. The white-haired man chuckled at the boy's deadpan. He jumped up, clacked his sandals together and landed atop a toad twice the size of a human. And with that, Jiraiya the gallant makes his exit. Naruto watched the toad hop away with wide eyes. What the foo? Yeah, oh, well I guess that's alright. You know, he might seem like an old lecher, but that man is very wise, Naruto, and he is one of the strongest shinobi of Konoha. I know how you are when it comes to meeting new people, but try to keep an open mind, alright? Sure, Naruto replied, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. He's written quite a few books as well. The blonde made a face. You mean those weird ones you keep reading? Kakashi chuckled at that. Well, I can't dispute that. But he's also written a very interesting novel that I think you'd like. Really? Naruto asked, surprised. What's it called? The masked man put a hand to his chin. What was it called? Oh, that's right. It's called The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Ninja. Chapter 18. Enter Team 7. The doors to the academy gates swung open, and out came the excited students. Look, Dad. I passed. I passed. That's my boy. The father replied proudly. Oh man, I failed. Another muttered to his friend, who just smiled sheepishly and gave him a pat on the back. Don't worry, man, you'll get it next time. This was the scene playing out for many of the bright-eyed youths as they chattered amongst themselves. Amidst the mass, a certain student smiled and threw their hands up to the sky, also wearing a shiny new headband. Woohoo! I did it. The beast inside nodded in agreement. I see. Congratulations. Did you see me in there? I was like, ha. And, whoosh. That exam was so easy. The Biju simply nodded again, though they appeared to give off a perplexed feeling. It did look a little too easy. Bah, who cares? The Jinchuriki waved the Biju off. I passed. That's all that matters. They placed a finger on their chin as they seemed to think hard about something. Do you think Naruto would have graduated by now as well? The question made Chome pause. Phew, he was wearing a headband when you met him. He told you he was here on business. Is she talking to herself? One student whispered to his friend, making him shrug in response. Oh, I guess you're right. She grinned as the Seven Tails sweat dropped. Fu interlocked her fingers behind her head and stared up at the sky. I wonder what he's doing right now. Target acquired. Please advise, a hooded figure whispered into his earpiece. He was standing in the shadows, on a rooftop away from prying eyes, watching as the seemingly unaware target in question walked along the streets. Copy. You have your instructions. Proceed with the objective. The man nodded, ever so slowly retrieving a single kunai from his pouch's knot to alert his mark. He brought the glinting object up, taking aim, and threw it with pinpoint accuracy as it sailed for the back of the target's head. Just as it was about to hit, the man tilted his head to the side, just enough for the knife to cut off a few strands of hair and harmlessly bury itself into the ground. Shit. The hooded man cursed, his cover having been blown, and immediately pulled out a smoke bomb before throwing it down at the target's feet. A big noxious cloud surrounded him as the assassin jumped down and ran into the smoke. He pulled out his short blade and swiped at the man's head, only for his sword to meet no resistance. What? He thought frantically as he looked around for his target. This is bad. If he lost sight of him and the target escaped, he'll be onto him and the mission might get. A chill ran down his spine as he sensed something behind him. Slowly turning around, he felt himself froze. He saw a white mask watching him, inches away from his own face within the smoke, waiting for the assassin to make a move, the blank porcelain glinting in the moonlight. The smoke dissipated, and his target was gone again, allowing him to catch his breath. Looking around, he saw him dash up a rooftop and quickly make his escape. What just happened? Am I seeing things? He shook his head. No, it doesn't matter. I can't let him escape. The man chased after him, following him onto the rooftops. He saw him drop down into the street below and into an alley, which he quickly took pursuit as he himself landed back onto the ground. Suddenly, all the wind was knocked out of him as a man in a bird mask drove his fist into his stomach. He was sent flying back towards a man in a bear mask, who slammed him into the ground, and another man in a tiger mask pinned his arm behind his back and pressed his heel on the back of his head. The last thing he saw before his vision turned dark was all three men surrounding him. Good job, Naruto. You did well to lead him towards us. Bird said, placing his hands on his hips as Tiger removed the hood from the slumped assassin, revealing an Iwa headband. Quote. Iwa again. Bear said in disdain as he crossed his arms. Naruto turned around and began to take his leave, making Bird look back towards him. Hey, if you're interested, we could use somebody like you in Anbu. He called out. Naruto paused and turned towards them. Why would I ever join Anbu? The blonde replied. Bird blinked as Naruto jumped away, and raised his hands up defensively when he saw Bear stare down at him. What? It was just a suggestion. He countered. Bear gave a sigh and shook his head. This isn't the first time I was tried something funny like this, Naruto thought as he let his feet direct him towards an aimless direction. Over the years, Iwa has been caught 5 times inside of Konoha. 2 of those times had been an attempt at his life. And while he had no definitive proof as to why, he could make an educated guess. His father, the Yellow Flash. The man that had made a mockery out of the Stone Army. It was no secret that Iwa still held deep-seated hatred towards the 4th Hokage. But that begged the question, how had Iwa managed to continuously infiltrate the Leaf? Was there a hole in their security system? Or was it an inside job? Was somebody from the Leaf handing out information to Iwa? He blinked and came to a stop when the sound of somebody panting reached his ears. As that, Mizuki-sensei. He thought in surprise. The man was hunched over and leaning against a tree, blood staining the side of his green flak jacket. On the ground besides him laid a big white scroll with green ends, something he recognized as the Forbidden Scroll. He'd seen it a few times in the Hokage's office when he was younger. What's he doing with that? He thought as he watched him from a distance. He looked like he'd been running non-stop and looked to be heavily injured. It wasn't too difficult to figure out what had happened. Mizuki's legs shook in effort before collapsing to the ground. I might have bitten off more than I can chew, he thought as he rested his back against the tree he was previously leaning on. I'll just take a quick little nap, no one will find me here. Naruto continued watching him for a few seconds before slowly making his way over to the downed form of one of his academy teachers. He tapped him several times with his foot and, after noticing no reaction from him, looked over towards the Forbidden Scroll. Thud. A figure quietly landed nearby and fixed its eyes on the seated boy before slowly approaching the child from behind. The person encased in shadows loomed behind the resident Jinchuriki, a single red eye shining from the darkness. He slowly raised a hand, clenched it into a fist. Bonk. Oh, Naruto complained as he rubbed the top of his head and looked up at the masked man behind him. Naruto. Kakashi drawled out in a threatening tone. Would you be so kind as to tell me why you took the Forbidden Scroll? I didn't take it, he replied, annoyed. Mizuki had it. I just happened to open it. Kakashi stared at Naruto, then looked over at the unconscious form of the Chunin a few meters away, then back to Naruto. He sighed and rubbed his eyes with his thumb and index fingers. All right, hand it over. But I'm not finished. I said give it. The copy ninja grabbed one end of the scroll, causing Naruto to grab the other end and pull against him, resulting in the two starting a tug of war. Kakashi planted his foot on Naruto's mask and used it as leverage to pull the scroll out of his grasp. Now, we're going to go back to the Hokage's office and we're gonna explain the whole situation to him. Kakashi said as he rolled the scroll back up. What? Why? I didn't do anything. Maybe so, but Mizuki has been going around all night claiming that he saw you escaping with the scroll, so people are calling for your head. Now pick him up. Naruto frowned. Why do I have to carry him? Because I'm carrying the scroll. Then I'll carry the scroll. Just pick him up, Naruto. Kakashi replied in exasperation. Fine. And those are the events that transpired, Hokage-sama. Kakashi finished his brief. I see, Hiruzen replied. Thank you, Kakashi. Mizuki will be taken under custody and be interrogated. He turned his attention towards the newly minted genin. And Naruto, I see that you've graduated once more. Congratulations. Naruto just tilted his head and looked elsewhere in the room. Hiruzen cleared his throat. It goes without saying that you did not look at the content of the scroll, am I right? Yes, Hokage-sama. Good, you two may go. Hiruzen said with a nod, making Naruto turn and leave the room. Hiruzen was about to return to his duties but stopped once he realized that Kakashi was still here. Something else I can do for you, Kakashi. I have a request. Hiruzen sighed and rubbed his forehead, before putting down the paperwork in his hands. What can I help you with? I would like Naruto on my team. Hiruzen frowned. I was planning on giving you Sasuke-kun, considering you are the only one that can train him with his dojutsu. He is quite the promising student. Yeah, I had a feeling you'd say that. And I already know about Sasuke. Kakashi countered. But you know just as well as I do that I know Naruto better than anyone. I've overseen his training since he was 6 years old. I know what his strengths are and what his weaknesses are. I can bring out his full potential. Kakashi paused before continuing. Besides, I'm sure you're aware that Naruto probably will not be willing to cooperate with any other Jonin. The Hokage heaved a small sigh. Were I to do that, then I would have to give Sasuke to somebody else, and you're the most suited for him. Naruto will just have to make do. Then give me both of them. Kakashi. Hiruzen interrupted in a stern tone. That would disrupt the balance of the teams. Naruto and Sasuke are both prodigies in their own rights. So, what? The masked man replied with a shrug. Naruto and Sasuke have trained together in the past. They would work better together, and nobody else but me would be better suited to train them. Yet you're willing to throw away that potential just to follow rules put in place dozens of years ago. That is enough, Kakashi. The old monkey stood up from his seat and fixed him with a frown. I will not speak on this matter again, so. Hiruzen trailed off, making Kakashi look at him weird. Actually, I take it back. I will allow this Kakashi. Kakashi blinked. You will. Yes, he said as he sat back down. But in return, you will do me a small favor. Which is? Kakashi said slowly, now on edge. Hiruzen didn't reply, and merely hid his smile behind his interlaced fingers. Why don't you give it up? A man wearing a hat said with a taunting smile. This game of tag is getting boring. A blond man hiding behind the trunk of a tree stared at the smoke bombs in his hand, before throwing them at the man with the hat. The man shielded his face as the bombs exploded and blocked his vision. Brief sparks flashed within the smoke before all went quiet. Once the smoke cleared, the blond man could be seen on his hands and knees, panting as his enemy pointed a kunai down at him. Give it up, he repeated once more. The blond man tiredly pushed himself up to one knee, his head down with his hair shadowing his eyes. Can I say one thing? I don't care to listen. His opponent shouted as he ran into him point first with his sharp blade. The blonde was pushed back as he painfully impacted against the trunk of the tree they were standing on. Die already. Give up, the blonde man said, surprising his enemy. He erupted into a cloud of smoke, indicating that he was only a clone. On making me give up. Before the enemy ninja could process what had happened, he was struck in the back of his head, making his hat fly off as he bounced against the tree and collapsed on his stomach. The man groaned. Even if you take me down, another assassin will attack the village. He chuckled and turned his head so he could stare up at the blonde man. As long as we are cursed to live in a ninja world, there will be no peace. The blonde, however, remained unfazed. Then, I'll break that curse, he said with conviction. If there is such a thing as peace, I'll seize it. I'll never give up. The enemy shinobi looked up at him in surprise. Who are you? The blonde man slowly raised his hand. My name is Naruto. Naruto blinked behind his mask and looked up from his book, making Sasuke raise an eyebrow in return. Did you hear what I said? Naruto replied. Did you say something? I said, what is this book you've been reading? I've seen you with it for the past few days. Oh, it's nothing. Just a story I like, he replied as he shut the book. Sasuke shrugged and took a seat next to him. The both of them were now sporting a headband with the leaf insignia on it, as was everybody else in the classroom. Now, they were just waiting for the arrival of their teacher, so the two sat in silence as they usually did. Yo, guys, a voice said behind them, making Naruto turn his head towards it. Choji, the son of the Akamichi clan head, gave them a big smile. Wow, so we all made it, huh? He said happily. Yahoo! Looks like it. The voice of Kiba replied loudly. Who are you all hoping to get paired with? Choji hummed as he ate a handful of potato chips. Shikamaru and, I don't really know. The Nara sleeping besides him snored in response. I don't care as long as they're not annoying, Sasuke said without turning, making Choji nod. Yeah, that, minus the rude bit. He turned towards his whiskered friend. What about you, Naruto? Naruto shrugged. It's all the same to me. Bah, it's graduation day and you two are still brooding. Liven up a little, Kiba said. A blush appeared on his face as he began to daydream. Me, I hope I'm paired up with some fine babes. Oh man, that would be the best. A monotone voice interrupted. Actually, Kiba, since you are an Inuzuka, it's more likely that you would be put on a tracking team. I predict that you will complement a formation comprised of Hinata and myself to excel in reconnaissance. Hiba said as he sent an annoyed side-eye at Shino Aburame. Hinata. Well, at least it's not an annoying girl like. Bang. Go all. Hiba winced as the girls in question loudly barged into the room. They turned to each other and exchanged heated glares. I won again. Sakura. What are you saying? Sakura replied with an annoyed twitch. The tip of my foot got in 1 centimeter faster. Ha. You must be blind. The two girls continued to squabble, before they both turned to the rows and looked for their object of interest. Shinaro. I'll be the one to sit next to Sasuke then. Sakura exclaimed, though her friend surprisingly seemed less enthusiastic. Wait, he's sitting next to. As if feeling their stare, the white mask turned in their direction, making them go rigid as a chill traveled through their spine. Hey, Sakura, you should go tell Naruto to move. No way. You do it. Starting today, all of you are real shinobi. But you are still only just genins, so the hard part of your journey that lies ahead has just started. Now, you will soon be getting missions to help the village. So today, we will create the 3-man teams and each team will have a Jonin sensei. You will follow your sensei's instructions in order to successfully complete your missions. Sensei. Where is Mizuki sensei? A boy asked. The students all looked around the classroom as if just noticing the absence of their second teacher, making Iruka nervously rub the back of his neck. Mizuki will be on absent leave for a little while. He replied before clearing his throat in an attempt to change the subject. But you shouldn't worry about that right now. Moving on, the groups have been determined so that the strength of the teams will be balanced. Team 1 will be. Iruka began listing out names and their associated teachers, some of which the blonde recognized, but held no interest for. Before long though, his name finally came up. Now then, next is Team 7, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto perked up slightly at that. Sakura Haruno. The girl went pale and slowly turned to look at her would-be teammate, who didn't seem to have any kind of reaction. And, Sasuke Uchiha. Your teacher will be Kakashi Hatake. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that. So Kakashi was finally going to be teaching a genin team. And coincidentally, he was gonna be teaching him. Why do I feel like this isn't a coincidence? He gave an anxious side look towards his teammates. Kakashi was gonna take it easy on them, right? Right. Sakura didn't seem to know whether she should be sad or happy. Well, at least I'm with Sasuke. Sasuke for his part looked happy with the team, or as happy as Sasuke could look anyway. I could do without Sakura, but I guess this could be worse. Weren't the teams supposed to be balanced? Shikamaru muttered to himself as he rested his cheek on his palm in boredom. In the afternoon, I'll introduce you to your Jonin teachers. You're dismissed until then. Sakura anxiously fiddled with her hands as she looked around the now empty classroom. All the other teams had gone with their sensei, and Iruka sensei had also left. So now, it was just the 3 of them, and tension was high. She looked over towards Sasuke. His fingers were interlaced in front of his face, and his eyes were closed. He was the epitome of cool and collected, as usual. She bit her lip when she recalled the events that had taken place during their recess. Oh, Sasuke-kun. Sakura called out with a smile and a wave. The Uchiha was walking in her direction with his hands in his pockets. He stopped in front of her and looked around, as if searching for something. Hey Sasuke-kun. I'm glad I found you. Maybe we can spend some time together and get to know each other a little better. You know, since we're going to be teammates now and all. Sasuke stopped looking around and finally locked his eyes onto her. Where's Naruto? He said, ignoring her request. The pinkett seemed taken aback by her question, but she quickly wiped it off her face and attempted to give him another smile. Ha, who cares about Naruto? That guy is really weird anyway, he gives me the creeps. She crossed her arms and frowned. He never ever talks and he hides his face behind a weird mask, clearly there's something wrong with him. It's like he doesn't even have any manners. Sasuke's eyes narrowed as he listened to her speak. Now that I think about it, he doesn't have any parents, right? So that's probably why he's so weird. He can do whatever he wants. She said as she raised her hands into a shrug. If I acted like that I'd be grounded for months. He's so lucky. All alone. No parents to ever tell him what to do and what not to do. Sasuke balled his hands into fists and began walking away. Wait Sasuke-kun, where are you going? Don't talk about things you don't know about, he said in a cold tone, surprising her. The Uchiha turned a corner and was gone from sight. Ever since then, Sasuke had been giving her the cold shoulder, even more so than before. Had she offended him with the comment she said about Naruto? She wasn't aware about any friendship between the two. As far as she knew, the two held some sort of rivalry, at least, Sasuke did, and Naruto just seemed to endure it. Her eyes drifted to the second teammate. It was always impossible to tell what that guy was thinking because of that blank mask. She wasn't too sure when he'd started wearing the thing, because she knew for a fact that he didn't have it during his first year at the academy. He was eerily quiet, only spoke when spoken to. His voice and tone was pretty soft-spoken. He never raised his voice or spoke long sentences, and he always looked like he wanted to blend in with the background. It was almost as if he was socially awkward. But then whenever it came to sparring, it was like he was a whole different person. It was almost like he was emanating some kind of aura that put people on edge. He always left himself wide open, but at the same time nobody could ever capitalize on it when they fought him. He was like a walking contradiction. Even now he sat a few seats away from Sasuke, arms resting on his desk, head and body a bit slouched forward. She almost thought that he was sleeping if it wasn't for the fact that she couldn't see him breathing. "Ah man, what's our sensei doing?" she exclaimed after a few more minutes of silence. "It's been nearly 2 whole hours already." She didn't expect a reply, but she had to break the silence somehow. That's why she was so surprised when she did receive one. "Kakashi-sensei is like that. You should get used to it." She blinked and looked towards her masked teammate and quickly attempted to compose herself. Do you know him, Naruto?" He twitched slightly, the first movement he made in 2 hours, she wondered. Something like that. The door suddenly opened, gaining the attention of Sasuke and Sakura. A man with a black face mask and lopsided silver hair poked his head in. "Come on. What's with everybody and their masks?" Sakura complained in her mind. How can I say this?" he said while rubbing his chin. "My first impression is, I don't like you guys." The 3 grouchy-looking students sat in a semicircle on the rooftop of the academy while Kakashi leaned against the railing in front of them. "Well then let's begin, I guess. Start with introducing yourself." He was met with 3 blank stares. What do you want to know?" Sakura replied, making Kakashi shrug. "How about your likes and dislikes, or your dreams for the future?" "Then why don't you go first? You look kinda suspicious." This is kind of nostalgic, Naruto thought. He and Yuna had had nearly the same reaction with Tomoda-sensei. "Oh, me," Kakashi said in a bored tone. "Well, my name is Kakashi Hatake. I don't feel like telling you guys what my likes and dislikes are. Dreams for the future. And hobbies, I have some." All he told us was his name, Sakura thought. Is that guy for real? Sasuke thought with wide eyes. Naruto had to resist the urge to smile behind his mask. This was classic Kakashi behavior. "Alright, now it's your turn," he said with an eye smile while pointing at Naruto. All eyes turned towards him, both of his teammates being curious about the blonde enigma. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I like ramen. I don't like mirrors. I don't have a dream and I train and read sometimes." Quote. Guess he doesn't really trust them yet, Kakashi thought. "I see. Well then, your turn next." Sasuke tore his eyes away from the Jinchuriki and directed them at his teacher. "My name is Sasuke Uchiha. There are lots of things I dislike and I don't really like anything. And, I can't really call it a dream," he paused. "But I have an ambition. I need to find a certain man." Find, eh? Kakashi thought in interest. "So cool," Sakura thought dreamily. "Alright, your turn," Kakashi said motioning towards Sakura. "My name is Sakura Haruno. The thing I like is, well the person I like is," her cheeks turned red as she glanced at the boy next to her. "And my dream for the future, she glanced over at the Uchiha again and giggled dreamily. "Oh yeah, I dislike Ino Pig. I definitely have my work cut out for me," lamented Kakashi as he listened to Sakura ramble on. "If I let her out of the village as she is now, she'd get killed on the first mission. Alright, that's enough with the introductions. Tomorrow, your time as a shinobi will begin." He closed his eyes as all 3 children stared up at him with intent. "But first, we are going to do a little bit of what I call survival training. Naruto tensed up at those words as a shiver ran through his spine, garnering strange looks from his teammates. Kakashi-sensei, we've had enough training at the academy already. Kakashi shot her one of his eye smiles. Well, I guess the cat's out of the bag now, I might as well tell you. Out of the 27 graduates, only 9 will be chosen to become a genin. Which means. Sakura grew pale at those words. Wait, what? That means that, we have a 66% chance of going back to the academy. Seriously. Sasuke thought as a nervous bead of sweat trailed down his forehead. Ah, but I guess you already knew this, Naruto, huh? Kakashi though in disappointment. Damn, he wanted to see the Uzumaki get nervous. Guess he'd have to try harder. Anyway, tomorrow you will have to prove to me that you have what it takes to become a shinobi. Bring all the tools you have available to you. The details are on this piece of paper. The genins watched as Kakashi pulled out 3 pieces of paper and placed them in front of them. He turned around to leave and gave them one final piece of advice. Oh yeah, and don't eat breakfast. You'll just throw it up. Quote. Sakura brought the piece of paper to eye level with shaky hands. If I fail this, I'll be sent back to the academy, she thought as she gulped. All of this will be for nothing, and I'll also be separated from Sasuke. Naruto stood up and walked over the edge of the building. You should probably ignore that last bit, he just said that to throw you off. Sasuke looked up at him with narrowed eyes. You sure seem to know a lot about that guy, Naruto. Naruto hummed in response before jumping off the building. After taking a moment to compose herself, Sakura turned towards her only remaining teammates only to notice that he was leaving as well. Wait, Sasuke-kun. If you have time after this, maybe you and I could. Sorry, busy. The girl deflated at the instant rejection. Naruto. You're late. Sasuke looked up from his position to see his blonde teammate walking over towards them. The blonde in question stopped next to them and looked around the training field. Looks like I got here before Kakashi-sensei, though. Yeah, real coincidence. Sasuke muttered, sarcasm dripping from his words. You could have warned us. And spoil the fun. Naruto replied as he hopped up on a tree branch and sat down. Sasuke scoffed and closed his eyes again. Sakura looked between both teammates anxiously. She felt incredibly out of place. Both boys knew each other already and she was worried that she wouldn't be able to fit in. What to do? Should she try making conversation? She was about to speak when she was cut off by another voice. Hey guys, good morning. You're late. Sakura yelled once more. Kakashi waved her off and placed a clock down on a training stump nearby. Alright, this clock is set for noon. He spoke. His 2 unmasked students looked at him, confusion evident on their faces. Here are 2 bells. All you have to do is take them from me before the time is up. Those who don't have a bell by noon gets no lunch. Not only that, I'll also tie you up those stumps and eat in front of you. Now was the time he was expecting them to complain about being hungry. However, he was surprised when all he saw was Naruto and Sasuke looking unbothered, and Sakura crossing her arms defiantly. He sent an annoyed look towards the blonde, who tried his best to appear innocent. Damn you, Naruto, I'll get you for this. Oh, one more thing. In addition to not eating lunch, whoever fails to get a bell will be sent back to the academy. The 3 genin looked at each other. No matter what happened today, someone was going to be sent back. It was hard to tell what Naruto was thinking, but Sakura seemed to look visibly distressed. As I said yesterday, you can use any tools you want. The only way you'll succeed is if you come at me with the intent to kill. A gust of wind blew across the field after these ominous words, making Sasuke and Sakura tense up in anticipation. Good, they're taking this seriously. The Jonin thought. Alright then, begin. Sasuke and Sakura immediately bounded off into the trees. He normally would have spared a second to mentally praise them about that fact, but the most important thing about a shinobi is to be able to hide yourself, he thought as he carefully watched the only member that hadn't fled to the trees. You know this, so why are you still here? His eye narrowed. Naruto hadn't moved from his position and was standing a few meters away from him. Hidden away in the surrounding foliage, his teammates watched the blonde in surprise. What's that guy doing? He can't seriously think he can take a Jonin on all by himself, right? Sakura thought. Both shinobi remained motionless, almost as if sizing the other one up. Suddenly, Naruto raised his hand up, putting the copy nin on edge. He threw an object on the ground, and he was immediately engulfed in a dark cloud of smoke, obstructing him from view. A smoke bomb, Kakashi thought. The smoke was disrupted as 5 clones shot out from within it, all flying towards him at impressive speed. Shadow clones, Kakashi thought as he looked upon the 5 blank faces approaching him. Naruto seemed to have developed a strange phobia over the years. Mirrors. Though to be precise, it wasn't the mirror itself that he feared, but what they reflected. The blonde could not seem to be able to look at himself without having a volatile reaction. He had no idea where those emotions stemmed from. However, Naruto was always tight-lipped when it came to it. Over the years, his phobia had only gotten worse to the point that he'd removed or broken any mirrors within his apartment. Unfortunately for him, this translated to his clones as well. The technique that Naruto once loved, he'd grown to hate it so much that he would avoid using it. Until one day 2 years ago, he showed up wearing this. It was hard to describe what that mask was supposed to be. It wasn't really anything at all. Most Anbu masks in Konoha were based off animals and such, but his was just blank. Just a white shape covering his face with 2 small eye holes cut out. When Kakashi questioned him about it, all Naruto did was shrug and say, "It's doing its job." Kakashi changed his position and ducked under a clone's swing, striking it in the stomach and dispelling it. He twirled a kunai into his hand and used it to dispatch 2 more clones with 2 clean slashes. Quote, exclamation mark, quote. Kakashi quickly crossed his arms in front of his face as a paper bomb detonated near him, having been ignited by the 3rd clone right before he was dispelled. He backflipped away, only being singed thanks to his quick reaction time, but barely had time to breath when one attempted to attack him from behind. He grabbed the clone by the wrist before spinning and throwing it at the last remaining clone, making the both of them dispel. He took a small breath when the last clone disappeared, but was caught by surprise when his masked student burst from beneath the ground underneath him. He didn't have time to turn around and defend as the blonde pulled his tanto out from its sheath and cut a diagonal slash across his back. Ah! Both genin stared with wide eyes and open mouth as they watched their Jonin-sensei fall to his knees, blood erupting from his back. He collapsed with a small thump, only to erupt into a puff of smoke and be replaced by a broken wooden log. Kakashi dropped from above and delivered a double kick to his student's back. The blonde dispelled in a cloud of smoke, showing that he was nothing but a clone as well. Another clone. Kakashi carefully looked around the empty training ground. Where's the original? That wasn't a regular clone jutsu, Sasuke muttered to himself after watching the back and forth between Kakashi and Naruto. He was surprised at the level of skill having been displayed, but he couldn't get distracted. From this position, Kakashi had his back turned to him, and his focus wasn't directed on the bells at his waist. Now was the perfect time to sneak in and snatch them without his knowledge. After taking another quick glance around, he was about to push off, but was stopped when somebody grabbed the back of his collar. He gasped and whipped around, forcing Naruto to let go of him. "What are you doing, idiot? Don't sneak up on me." Naruto ignored him. "I think I know what we're supposed to do." Sasuke frowned and crouched back down on the tree branch he'd been hiding in. "Well, yeah, so do I. We need to take those bells." Naruto shook his head. "No, that's not it." "Then what?" "Just listen." The voice of his former teammate echoed in his mind. "When's the last time you've seen a genin team with only one genin? It's never happened before. Konoha is all about teamwork, right? Why would he be the one to make the only one-man team?" "I'll tell you in a second, but we need Sakura." Quote, quote. "What the hell for?" "Ah." Sakura yelped in surprise when she awoke from her sleep-induced genjutsu. Blinking, she looked up at the blank face of her teammate who removed his hand from her shoulder. "Naruto. What are you?" She stopped when Sasuke landed next to the blonde. The Uchiha looked at her with a small frown before stuffing his hands in his pockets and closing his eyes. "Sasuke-kun. You're okay. We need to come up with a plan together if we want to pass this test," Naruto said, not one to beat around the bush. "Wait, you want to team up?" She looked at Sasuke with wide eyes. "You too, Sasuke-kun." Sasuke grunted in reply. That seemed to be enough for the girl, much to Naruto's surprise. Alright. What do you need me to do? Kakashi watched a small clump of grass roll in the wind with boredom. There's been nothing but quiet for the past 10 minutes, and he was growing restless. Now in this situation, he would usually pull out his favorite book and partake in his favorite guilty pleasure, but with these kids in the mix, he knew that that little trickster would somehow manage to catch him off guard. Hey, he did want them to pass his exam, but that didn't mean that he would make it easy. He took in a deep breath and looked up at the sky. Rustle. His eyes snapped back down to where the noise had come from and put his guard up again, though he relaxed slightly when he saw who had landed in front of him. Oh, it's just Sasuke. So it's the lone Avenger's turn now, huh? He drawled out. Let's see how you fare compared to the two others. Sasuke only gave him a smirk in return, before closing his eyes. He snapped them open again, revealing red irises with a single tomo in each eye before he rushed towards the copy ninja. Sharingan, huh? Wonder when he awakened it. Kakashi thought, blocking a high kick from the Uchiha prodigy. Sasuke used Kakashi's arm to jump behind him and attempt to kick him in his back, but Kakashi merely crouched down low and let the foot harmlessly sail above his head. He threw a low sweep at his teacher which he effortlessly avoided, making Sasuke stumble forward. Sasuke cursed and quickly regained his footing. He dug his hand in his kunai pouch and threw a handful of shuriken at Kakashi, but frowned when the Jonin was replaced by a wooden log, making his Sharingan dart all over the place. His eyes widened and he backflipped out of the way of a hand popping out from under the ground that attempted to grab him by the ankle. Fire style. Great fireball, just you. Sasuke flew through hand signs as he sailed through the air and fired off a great ball of fire towards the exposed hand, setting the immediate area ablaze. Sasuke landed as he cautiously watched for any signs of his teacher. Sure enough, Kakashi popped back up a few ways away from the burnt grass. He looked at the patch with his usual bored look and waved his smoking arm to cool it down. Phew, that was a close one. He turned his attention back towards his student. However, Sasuke just gave him a smirk before suddenly ducking down. Out of nowhere, Naruto shot forward above Sasuke like a bullet and drove his foot in Kakashi's stomach. The Jonin slid back and coughed in surprise, and quickly had to pull a kunai to deflect a Tonto slash from the Uzumaki, then a second, and a third. Sasuke. Naruto called out. The Uchiha weaved through more hand signs and blew out a volley of smaller fireballs. Fire style. Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Kakashi was forced to dodge to the side away from the barrage, and was immediately put on the defensive again. He threw a wide slash forward which Naruto was forced to deflect. The blonde jumped, delivering a two-hit sword combo. Kakashi blocked both, and had to readjust his stance when Naruto came in with a sudden diagonal slash, before jumping up and delivering another two-hit combo and finishing with a final cross. Now, Sakura. Naruto threw one final kick at Kakashi, which he blocked. However, with his attention preoccupied, he didn't notice the log behind him get substituted with the female member of Team 7. Before Kakashi had time to react, Sakura jumped forward, arm outstretched, grabbed a hold of the bells from Kakashi's belt and yanked them off. Ow, ow, ow. Sakura slid across the ground and bounced onto her back, before stopping with a thud. All was quiet for a while as the rest of the team stared at the panting girl. Finally, the Pinkett victoriously thrust her fist that was holding the bells in the air. I got them. HN. Sasuke smiled as he and Naruto walked over to the female member and stood next to her, all three now looking over at Kakashi. Well, sensei, looks like we win. Kakashi closed his eye and dusted himself off. Looks like you do, he repeated. He opened his eye and leveled them with a serious stare. But who will be sent back now, I wonder? Quote. Sasuke frowned. Sakura bit her lip and looked down at the ground, and Naruto silently looked at his two teammates. He already knew what Kakashi was doing, so he decided to remain quiet and see what they would come up with for now. Sasuke opened his mouth to speak. It should be me. Everybody turned to Sakura in surprise, who was still staring at the ground and clutching the bells with shaking hands. She hesitated. Compared to you two, I didn't really contribute much, she said with a trembling voice. You two are so strong, and you Naruto, she looked up at her blonde teammate. You came up with this whole plan. All I did was grab those bells while you two distracted him. If anybody here should go back to the academy, then it should be me. Are you sure, Sakura? Kakashi asked. Sakura slowly nodded, having already accepted her fate. No, I don't think that's right. Sasuke suddenly said out of nowhere. Sakura's eyes widened as her head shot up to look at the Uchiha. Everybody contributed. Besides, I've never seen two-man teams before. It's always been squads of 3. So, whatever it is you're trying to do, it's not working. He finished while sending a small frown to the copy ninja. Sasuke-kun is defending me. Sakura thought in shock. So that's how it is, huh? Kakashi muttered with a frown. He slowly walked forward, a threatening aura surrounding him. Sakura took a step back in fright and Sasuke shifted uneasily, a bead of sweat rolling down the side of his face. If that's the case then, you all. The frown and aura disappeared and was replaced by a cheerful eye smile. Pass. Huh, Sakura said, stunned. Congratulations everyone, you are henceforth all officially members of Team 7. He finished in a happy tone. He closed his eye before staring up at the sky as if reminiscing on some long-forgotten memory. A ninja must always look underneath the underneath. Those who break the rules and codes of the ninja world are trash, but you know what? Those who don't care about their comrades and abandon them are lower than trash. An old teammate of mine once told me this. An old teammate, Naruto thought with a frown. Kakashi's old team. He wondered what kind of people they all were. Sakura's mouth hung open, still processing what had just happened, making Kakashi chuckle and give them all a thumbs up. Starting tomorrow, Team 7 will begin its duties. So, eat well, sleep well and look forward to it. And with those final words, Kakashi was gone in a cloud of smoke. Sakura blinked at that, and looked to her two teammates. We really did it. Sasuke crossed his arms and gave his team a small smirk. Nice work, Naruto. And even you, Sakura. Maybe there's still hope for you. Thanks Sasuke-kun. I think. She deflated slightly, but quickly regained her energy. Time to go celebrate. She was met with a distinct groan coming from Sasuke, but was surprised when nobody objected. She smiled at that. They may have had a rocky start, but this might not be so bad after all. Chapter 19. Risky Business. Special, Genin. Naruto repeated those words with confusion, making Kakashi nod in return. That's right. What's that, sensei? Sakura asked. As a special Genin, you will be needed to assist the current teams of Genin in their training at the behest of their respective Jonin sensei. You will also be rostered as among the first selected when they are in need of additional non-critical support for B-rank missions and under. Naruto frowned. But why me? Because Naruto, out of all of this year's Genin batch, you are the one with the most experience. Hokage-sama is also worried that you might become a liability. He finished mostly to himself. The blonde stared down at his bowl of ramen, the frown still present behind his mask. Something about all this was fishy. The most experience, Sakura repeated. Will this come in the way of our own trainings and missions? Sasuke asked. Kakashi shook his head. It shouldn't. He'll be able to prioritize Team 7. His eyes moved back to Naruto. You all right with that? Do I have a choice? Muttered the blonde. Not really. Will this not overwork him though? Sakura said with furrowed brow. Oh, no, it's not gonna be that often. Kakashi reassured. Now come on guys, let's finish our meal and do a mission before training. Oh, is it finally time for our first one? Kakashi sent an eye smile towards the excited girl. Yup. Oh no, Naruto thought as he went rigid, causing Sasuke to look at him strangely. Looks like he's finally realized. Kakashi thought gleefully. Your mission is to catch Tora. Hiruzen said as he handed Kakashi the documents. Who's Tora? Sakura asked. She turned to the rest of her team and noticed that Naruto was already leaving the room. Naruto, where are you going? Going to catch Tora, he said with a hint of annoyance in his voice. Sakura blinked. She'd never heard him talk in that tone before. Sensei, who is Tora? Kakashi merely gave her another smile. Where the fuck is that goddamned cat? Sasuke cursed into his communication device. Hey now, no need for such language. Sensei, you can shove your opinion up your. Target spotted. Eastern distributor near the bridge. The two other genin quickly moved into position after hearing their teammates' words. Within only a minute, all three formed a perimeter around the area, leaving no room for their target to escape. In position. I'll flash bomb it out. No, Naruto. Target needs to remain as undamaged as possible. Kakashi berated. Fine. Sasuke. Sakura. Bring up the rear. Roger. Got it. The two landed behind the cat, making it jump up in fright and sprint away, but it skidded to a stop when Naruto landed in front of it and blocked its path. We're. Tora screeched, almost like it recognized his old tormentor. Naruto fought off an evil grin and snatched it by the scruff of its neck. Tora violently thrashed about for a few seconds as it tried to claw him, but gave up soon once he realized it was futile. Does he have a ribbon on his right ear? That's the target, there's no mistake. Sasuke confirmed. Good work, team. Let's bring that bad kitty home. Finally, the Pinkett complained. Clang. From the sidelines, Sakura watched the high-speed battle between her two teammates in amazement. Sasuke was incredibly agile, very tactical and favoring acrobatics. But Naruto was quick, and very strong. It was amazing to see. Each strike he did had a purpose and everything that Sasuke threw at him was easily countered. The two were now locked in a blade battle, with Sasuke using a kunai and Naruto using his short sword. Sasuke flew at Naruto for the umpteenth time that match as he clashed his blade against Naruto's. The blonde pushed back against him, making him have to lean forward and put more force behind it, but stumbled forward when Naruto disappeared from in front of him and kicked him from behind. That reminds me, Kakashi rubbed his chin, making Sakura look away from the battle and to her sensei. We still need to figure out what your chakra nature is. He finished as he began fishing around his pouch. Oh, right, Sakura replied. Just mine. I already know what Naruto's and Sasuke's are. Naruto is a wind type, and Sasuke is a lightning type. A lightning type? Really? She said with surprise. Yeah, that surprised me as well. It's fine though. I'm a lightning type too, so it all works out. He handed her a piece of paper. Here. Sakura took the offered paper and pushed some chakra into it, already knowing what to do. The two watched as the white surface slowly turned brown before it began to crumble to dust near the edges. Oh, an earth type, huh? Damn it, stay still, Sasuke shouted as Naruto continued to slip away just out of reach. The blonde ducked underneath a punch and kicked him away again, sending him sailing towards the two spectators. Kakashi leaned back as the Uchiha flew in between the both of them and impacted against a tree, but Sakura was shocked when the boy merely picked himself up again and ran back into the fight. These two are intense, she said in awe. She watched her blonde teammate with fascination. Even though she couldn't see his face, she could just tell that he wasn't even breaking a sweat. While Sasuke was giving it his all, Naruto was pulling his punches yet always made sure to be slightly better than Sasuke. It made her wonder just how strong he really was. Are you curious about Naruto? Kakashi questioned, making Sakura blush in embarrassment. He was an enigma in our class, everybody was curious about him. He rarely spoke to anyone and mostly kept to himself. If I'm being honest, he scares me a little. The girl admitted. Kakashi hummed. I can see that. Though, I wouldn't worry so much. Naruto doesn't bite, he just has a certain way of dealing with things. I see, she replied. The way you say that, it makes it seem like you two have known each other for a while. Is that true? Kakashi remained silent for a few moments, before giving her one of his trademark smiles. Maybe you should ask him yourself. Ask him. Sure, why not? But he's not gonna shoot you down or anything. He doesn't talk a lot, but he's not a rude guy. He's just not used to people taking such an interest in him. If you don't initiate something, chances are he'll just assume that you don't care. Kakashi clapped his hands once, drawing her attention back. Let's get back on topic. Now, to train your earth ability. After a few hours of rigorous training, Team 7 began making their way back towards the rural section of Konoha. Sakura sighed as she dragged her feet on the ground, a tired look plastered on her face. Man, I'm beat. Kakashi gave her a smile. All that means is you worked hard. You should feel proud, Sakura. The girl sighed again, not able to muster up the courage to even celebrate. Constantly pushing your chakra control to the limit felt like running a marathon. The team rounded a corner and entered the shopping district where they would split up for the day. Walking past a shack selling varying types of fish, A bald man with a thin rope tied around his forehead blinked and stared at the team passing by. The man said, recognizing some of the members. Why if it isn't Kakashi-san? And, Naruto, was it? The group turned towards the man who sent them a wide smile. Naruto frowned. He'd seen him before, but he couldn't quite put a name to his face. Sakana-san, it's been a while. Ah, now he remembered. This was the fisherman that had hired them to fix his shack after a storm had ransacked it. They were also hired to find his father shortly after, but... Naruto, who's this guy? Sakura whispered to him, but the bald man heard her regardless. He crossed his arms with a big grin plastered on his face. Ah, come on girlie, you don't remember me. I hired you guys to do some work on my, he blinked and tilted his head to the side at the two unfamiliar faces. Now that I think about it, you two look different. And Kakashi wasn't there, was he? It has been a long time. You're thinking of Naruto's other team. Kakashi supplied, helpfully catching the two other genin by surprise. They looked over at Naruto, who was avoiding everybody's gaze. Ah, that makes sense. I hope that all of you are doing okay. They're doing fine, Naruto muttered in reply. The man seemed genuinely friendly, so he didn't have the heart to tell him the truth. After a brief exchange, the group continued on its way. Sakura looked at Sasuke in worry as the Uchiha burned a hole in the back of the blonde's head with his stare, which said boy did his best to ignore. After a few minutes of silent walking though, Sasuke suddenly stopped, a frown present on his face. Naruto, he called out, making the team stop and turn their attention to him. You were already a genin before us, weren't you? The question sounded more like a statement and Sasuke was asking for confirmation. Naruto nodded, making him frown more and cross his arms. Since when? Come on Sasuke-kun, there's no way that's possible. Naruto was in our class at the academy. Sakura attempted to reason. But Sasuke wasn't convinced. Yeah, but he joined halfway through. So before that, again, all he received in response was a nod. But, that's crazy. You would have been 9 years old, right? Sakura said. Naruto looked over to Kakashi, who had decided to sit this one out for now, before looking back at his two other teammates. It's not that weird. There's been younger genin than that in the past. Sasuke shook his head. There's something I don't understand. If you were a genin, then why were you at the academy with us? And why are you teamed up with us? What about your old team? Naruto exhaled slowly and closed his eyes. This conversation was starting to give him a headache. Things happened. We disbanded. Naruto turned and continued walking, prompting the others to follow after him. How long were you a genin for, Naruto? Sakura asked. Naruto tilted his head and held his chin in thought. I forgot. 6 months. Kakashi said. That's short. I thought it was longer. What were your teammates like? Naruto looked down as a small, melancholic smile adorned his face. They were very reserved. Sensei was the exact opposite though. He wore his heart on his sleeve. Sakura and Sasuke looked at each other before looking at the blonde again. Are they still alive? Naruto suddenly stopped, the two genin nearly crashing into him as a result. He attempted to find the right words to say, but it was kind of a tough situation to explain. Some of them are. Well, it wasn't like that was a total lie. Tomoda-sensei was dead, but Sho was still alive. As for Yuna, well, until they found her, she was both either alive or dead. Now that he thought about it, this reminded him of story about an experiment with a cat. He couldn't remember the name though. Okay, but why did you disband? Sasuke insisted. Kakashi noticed Naruto hesitate and decided to finally intervene. Alright, I think that's enough questions for the day. I don't know about you guys, but I'm starving. At the mention of food, Sasuke and Sakura's stomachs began making noise, causing Kakashi to give them his signature smile. Well, say no more, because I know a great place. 2 months later, the very first thing he noticed was the lack of weight on his face. 2 hands reached up hoping to be met with the familiar feeling of his mask, but only touched cold, soft skin instead. His hands lingered for a moment, before dropping down at his sides. Where am I? Blue orbs slowly opened and was met with the sight of a long corridor, with at least a dozen doors on each side. He took a lazy, measured step forward, followed by another, before suddenly stopping once more. He turned towards the mirror attached to the wall, almost like some kind of zombie, and gazed at his own reflection. Half-lidded eyes and a pale, skinny face looked back at him. He continued to stare for a few more minutes before continuing down the corridor. Once more, he stopped in front of the first of many doors. He watched as his hand slowly came up and weakly grabbed the doorknob before turning it and opening the door. His eyes fixed on the ground, he walked forward then stopped. Slowly raising his head again, he looked down the corridor. Another corridor. Was it the same corridor? He looked back behind him only to be met with nothing. The door he'd just gone through had disappeared. He continued forward, unperturbed, and walked past the same mirror and up to the second door, the one next to the previous one he'd just walked into. Again, here he was. He looked to the side at the same mirror, the same reflection. He moved on and continued forward, opening the third door. No, that one was wrong as well. The fourth. No, wrong. The fifth. Not that one either. Not the sixth, not the seventh, nor the eighth. Before long, he'd gone through all the doors and he was struck with the sudden realization that he was stuck here. No matter what he did, he was sent back here, at the beginning. Was he cursed to wander this hallway for eternity? With no way forward, no way back, no way out. He was stuck. Stuck with nowhere to go. It felt suffocating. He slowly closed his eyes and sat down on the ground in grim acceptance. No matter what he did, he always ended up back here. Wake up, fool. Naruto's eyes snapped open and came face to face with a single red eye. He blinked and looked around his surroundings, fearing that he'd be met with the same corridor, but only saw an annoyed-looking Ninetales instead. Oh, he said, standing up from his fetal position. If you're going to toss and turn, then at least do it where I can't hear you, the fox growled. Why are you even here? The blonde sighed and reached up to rub his hair. I don't know, he admitted. His hand suddenly shot up to his face and was relieved to feel the hard surface of his mask. He pushed himself to his feet and walked over to one of the many mirrors that now littered his mindscape. He stared back at his own reflection, finding comfort at the sight of the white surface. Closing his eyes, he walked back to the spot he'd awoken from before. Kyuubi watched through narrowed eyes as the boy sat back down before laying on his back and staring up at the infinite void that was this space inside his mind. These dreams of yours are becoming more and more confusing. The fox said carefully. Oh, you see them too. I didn't see them. I felt the emotions they gave you through the seal. Naruto didn't really know what that meant, but that didn't matter that much. I've stopped trying to figure them out a while ago. Kyuubi gave another huff before falling back into silence. What does all of this mean, Kyuubi? Naruto said, an uncertain tremor in his voice. All these things I've been seeing, all these dreams, what's happening to me? He was met with silence, prompting him to tilt his head from his laid-down position to look at the fox. You're thousands of years old, right? Have you seen anything like this before? I do not worry myself with such trifling matters. Humans are weak and are walking contradictions. Hee, you're probably right about that, Naruto said softly. The fox made a noise that sounded something like a scoff, but it held no malice. Little by little, it felt like he was starting to tolerate him more. You know, this one time when I went out of the village, it felt like I saw the future. The future. Don't be stupid. No, I swear it happened. I was in one of Orochimaru's lairs and some kind of monster appeared. I was so surprised that I wasn't able to react in time when it attacked me. Then it jumped at me and I died. Naruto paused and frowned. At least, I thought I did. Somehow, I was standing in front of it again right before it jumped, and this time, I was able to react before it could kill me. Kyuubi listened to the boy in half interest. He normally did not care about human drivel, but this boy wasn't the type to lie. One of the perks of being the nine-tailed beasts was being able to feel people's emotions, and his jailer so far had only been telling him the truth. Or at least, what he thought was the truth. HMPH. You were probably so afraid that your mind conjured up images. Pathetic if you ask me. The warden of the mighty Nine Tails, terrified of such a petty creature. A small smile appeared behind his mask. It almost sounded like Kyuubi respected him. His eyes landed on its massive frame again. The fox was laying down as usual, head resting on his hands and his eyes closed with his large tails idly swishing behind him. The same fox that never debased itself with talking to a human and proceeded to immediately kick him out the very first time they'd met had nearly just given him a compliment. How times had changed. Well, I should get going, the blonde said once they'd fallen into a comfortable silence. He pushed himself to his feet and was about to perform the sign to leave, but was interrupted by his inmate. Naruto. Wait. Huh. Naruto said in surprise. He couldn't remember the last time that Kyuubi called him by his name. He appeared to be thinking hard about something. You're still trying to find that mask, aren't you? Naruto blinked slowly at that. Nothing's changed, he replied simply. I expected as much. Don't. Pardon. It's a fool's errand. There are too many unknown variables at play. And even if you do find that mask, there is no telling whether or not it will work. The Shinigami isn't just going to hand over the other half of my soul. He might kill you, or even take your soul instead. Ah, are you worried about me, Kyuubi? Naruto joked, something that now felt alien to him. I am being serious, idiot. The fox growled. If you die, then I'll die as well. The last thing we want to do is draw a god's ire. Naruto stared into the eyes of the nine tails. I made you a promise, didn't I? Kyuubi gave a snarl. Promises, a human's word. They mean nothing to me, or to a god. Humans lie and deceive. Promises can be easily broken. Then I'll just have to prove it to you, won't I? Kyuubi's frowned angrily at that. Why? Why are you doing all this? Why are you going so far to help me? Naruto tilted his head to the side and brought a hand to his chin, almost like he was thinking hard about it before shrugging. I dunno. The fox's brow twitched irritably. All I know is that I want to help you and your siblings. And once I make a promise, I never go back on my word. Kyuubi scoffed. And what can you do? You are just a human. Naruto's eyes fell to the ground before looking back up and meeting Kyuubi's. Then help me. Help you, he repeated incredulously. If I'm just a human like you said, then I'll need help, won't I? He clenched his hand and stared at his fist, getting a sudden urge. He looked back up at the demon and held his fist forward, feeling a strange sense of familiarity from the action. What do you say? The fox stared at the extended fist in bewilderment. For the first time, he had no snide remarks or mocking retorts. He was at a loss for words. Naruto held his fist out for a moment longer before he finally lowered it. Well, think about it. This will be much easier with you. With those final words, the nine tails watched his host fade away, back into the real world. He frowned in confusion and stared down at his own hand, before clenching it into a fist as well. Sensei, are you sure this is all right? Relax, it's fine. Quote. Come on Sasuke, hurry up. TCH. Naruto's eyes opened and lingered on his ceiling for a moment before he slowly turned his head towards the door. Voices could be heard coming from the other room. He pushed himself to his feet and opened the door to his bedroom. As he walked into his living room, he was greeted with the sight of his team standing next to an open window. Yo! Kakashi greeted with a smile after taking notice of him, causing the others to turn to him as well. What are you doing? Hey Naruto. This was Kakashi-sensei's idea, I swear. Sakura suddenly said. Naruto looked over at the girl, making her recoil nervously, before looking over at Sasuke, who had his hands stuffed in his pockets with an embarrassed look on his face. Finally, he looked over at Kakashi, before rubbing the back of his head and turning away. Whatever, he muttered as he walked back to his bedroom. Thought he'd be more uncomfortable, but this is fine too. With Naruto gone, Kakashi made himself at home as he rummaged through Naruto's kitchen cabinet. Meanwhile, Sakura looked around Naruto's place in curiosity. She wasn't really sure what she'd been expecting, maybe an empty white room with a single bed. But no, this place was surprisingly normal. It wasn't too messy or too tidy. There were no dirty dishes and no dirty laundry to be seen, but books and ninja supplies were strewn about haphazardly. She walked over to a coffee table and bent down, reading a few of the titles from the stack of books before moving along and picking up a roll of metal wire. What are we doing here, sensei? Sasuke asked Kakashi as he too glanced around the room. He'd never been here before after all. Well, Naruto wasn't at the meeting spot, so I figured he was probably sleeping in. I just thought we'd meet up here instead. We've completed our quota of 50 D ranks, so we're now eligible for a C rank mission. Oh, that's a thing. The girl placed a finger against her chin in contemplation. Our first C rank. I know I should be excited, but I can't help but feel a little nervous. She anxiously pressed a hand to her cheek and stared down at the floor. What do you think, Sasuke-kun? Sakura turned towards her teammate when she received no reply. Sasuke-kun. The Pinket's words were lost to the Uchiha as he frowned at an object that had caught his attention. A picture frame sat next to a stack of books on a bookshelf, a picture of Naruto and 3 other shinobi he didn't recognize. Naruto seemed much younger and his mask was absent. But what surprised him the most was Naruto's face. He seemed happy. Gone were the empty eyes and the tired lines. The blonde in the picture seemed carefree. He wore a stupid grin on his face, one that he'd never seen on him before. Sasuke continued to stare at the item with interest. Could this be the team that he'd told them about the other day? Sakura approached Kakashi, who was still busy digging around the pantry for something. She watched him take out tea bags and sugar, then opened the fridge in search for milk. Huh, didn't expect Naruto to be a tea drinker, she said as she absently clasped her hands together behind her back. He isn't. Kakashi opened the carton of milk and peered inside before tipping it upside down, but was disappointed when nothing came out. How old is this milk? The door to the bedroom opened and Naruto walked out, sporting his tanto and the rest of his equipment. Naruto, I was just telling Sasuke and Sakura that we'll be taking our first C rank mission today, Kakashi said as he turned to look at the boy. The blonde froze for a split second, just as he expected. But he quickly recovered and took a seat on one of his dining table chairs. I see, Naruto said softly, memories of his last C-rank mission played in his head. Apparently we've fulfilled our quotas for D-rank missions, Sakura said. We did 50 already. Wait, you knew about that? Ahem. Kakashi cleared his throat to regain their attention. As I was saying, once everybody is ready, we can collect our mission details from the Hokage Tower. Depending on the assignment, we'll have a short break to gather the equipment we'll need before we head out. Right, Sakura said with a nod. Naruto stared down at his table, his thoughts still muddled from the news. Naruto, Kakashi said, catching his attention. This is part of the job. I know, the blonde replied. Sakura blinked as she and Sasuke watched the exchange in confusion. Kakashi nodded and took a sip from the tea he'd made. Sakura looked at Kakashi, back at Naruto, then back to Kakashi before finally looking down at his teacup. Selfish jerk. A C-rank mission, Hiruzen repeated in surprise, before frowning and riffling through some documents. Well, I suppose that you have indeed completed your quota, but I'm afraid that the Jonin-sensei of Team 8 has requested that you assist in their training today, Naruto-kun. Naruto opened his mouth to reply, but Kakashi beat him to the punch. I believe Kurenai and her team can wait, Hokage-sama. As per our agreement, Team 7 takes priority. Naruto can go take care of the request once we come back. Hiruzen's sharp gaze met with Kakashi's calm eye while the 3 genin looked between the two in confusion. Very well. The third finally conceded and opened up a folder on his desk. This just came in today. I believe it will be right for you. This assignment requires the protection of a certain individual. Hiruzen turned to the door. Hey, will you come in here? The door creaked open and the stench of alcohol made the nose of the genin twitch in discomfort. What's this? They all look like a bunch of super brats. I wouldn't be surprised if they still wore diapers. A fisherman holding a bottle said as he wiped his lips with the back of his hands. Grr, who is he calling a brat? Sakura thought with gritted teeth. Was he just waiting behind there the whole time? The Uchiha thought incredulously. The man walked up to the group and stared down at the mask-wearing blonde in disapproval. I'm supposed to trust you lot with my life. Naruto stared back up at him as the man leaned away and placed his hands on his hips. Listen up. I am the super bridge builder, Tazuna. I expect you to provide me super protection until I get back to my country and complete the bridge. Quite. Hiruzen muttered. Well, Team 7, I'll leave this in your capable hands. Kakashi turned towards his students after having finished reading the mission details. Alright, pack for at least 2 weeks worth. We're heading to Wave Country and will be guarding this man until he completes a bridge in the Land of Waves. The trip there will take a day or two. We'll meet back at the gate entrance in 30 minutes. Dismissed. Yes, sir. The 3 dashed away and disappeared, making Tazuna blink and scratch his head as he looked around. Where the hell'd they go? After the allotted time had passed, the three genin met up with Kakashi and the client in front of the village gates. The team checked out and soon were on their way. Woohoo! Let's go! Sakura exclaimed happily with her arms in the air. What are you so excited about? Sasuke questioned. It's just, this is my first time stepping out of the village, this is exciting. Everything ahead of us will be an entirely new experience. She looked between her two teammates. Have you guys been past the gates before? I have, was all the blonde said. Sakura blinked at the tone before opening her mouth in realization. Oh, that's right. She turned her attention towards the Uchiha. My older brother used to take me there. Sometimes, Sasuke admitted after a moment's silence. During the 2 months that the three of them had been together, the team had grown a bit closer. All the sparring sessions and the missions they've experienced as a group looked to have strengthened the bond between them, and Kakashi could see it clearly. Sasuke was less aloof. He would sometimes take part of a conversation unprompted, which never happened before. And Naruto, well, baby steps, as they said. It was difficult for Naruto to let his guard down after what had happened to his previous team, but despite that, the copy nin could see progress, as was evident by the morning's interaction. Sakura was the one that had changed the most. With how far the two boys took it whenever they sparred, she was forced to attempt to keep up or be swept away by the storm. Her obsessive tendencies still reared its head every now and then, but she was able to focus on her training despite that. And much to his joy, since the conversation they had all those days ago, she's also began to open up with the Jinchuriki. That reminds me, what did you guys pack? She continued. Sasuke hummed and readjusted the pack on his bag at her mention. I have essential tools, wires, explosive tags and some rations. And a sleeping bag. Naruto nodded, indicating he was carrying the same. Sakura suddenly froze and went pale, making the two others stop and turn their attention to her. What's wrong? I forgot my sleeping bag. How could you forget the most important thing? Kakashi sighed and shook his head. Well, I've got an extra one, so you can use that one. Just don't forget it next time, Sakura. Really, sensei? But your bag is so small. Storage scroll. Oh, is this their first mission? Am I really gonna be safe with these brats? Tazuna thought as he nervously took a gulp of his drink. Hey Tazuna-san, you're from Wave Country, right? Sakura suddenly asked. What about it? Do they have ninja in that country too? No, not in Wave. The cultures and customs are different. Kiri holds most of the Land of Water's military power. As Tazuna continued to tell the kunoichi about Wave Country, Sasuke turned his attention towards a small puddle on the path. A puddle, he thought before looking up at the clear blue sky. He looked over towards Kakashi and noticed him give it a passing glance but seemed to ignore it and continue on unperturbed. The puddle of water shifted and melded into two beings, both wearing gas masks and wielding a metal gauntlet connected by a spiked chain. One of them shot forward and wrapped the barbed links around a surprised Kakashi, before yanking on it and ripping him to shreds. One down, one of the brothers said darkly. Sakura's eyes widened in horror as she watched Kakashi's body erupt in a shower of blood. Sen. Sakura. Protect Tazuna. Sasuke shouted as he moved in to intercept one of the brothers. Sakura gasped as the one with the long shaggy hair threw a shuriken at the old man. She jumped forward and deflected the metal star with a kunai before quickly standing in front of him. Please stand back, sir. Right. The man with the spiky hair twisted a contraption on his glove, causing the chain on his end to come undone. His brother swung his arm and aimed the chains at the blonde. Naruto raised his hand as a golden chain of his own materialized in front of him and moved in to intercept the threat. Quote, question mark, quote. Naruto's eyes widened as his chain dissolved into golden dust before it could fulfill its job, and it was all he could do to backflip out of the way of the sharp links. The demon brother laughed and took pursuit, but was blindsided by a large fireball sent out by Sasuke. What? The missing ninja exclaimed and crossed his arms in front of his face. The fireball set him ablaze, making him scream in pain and roll around on the floor. Maizu. Gozu yelled before gritting his teeth. Damn you. You're gonna pay for th. His voice died in his throat as the blonde flashed in front of him, faster than he could react and delivered a crushing strike to his face that broke his mouth guard. His eyes rolled to the back of his head as he fell to the ground, unconscious. Tazuna watched the fight happen with wide eyes. It had all happened so quick. In the world of shinobi, when one fighter was clearly stronger than the other, fights usually barely lasted more than a minute. Those kids are strong. His eyes moved from the two shinobi to where Kakashi had been slaughtered. But your sensei is, huh? The remains of the scarecrow had been replaced by pieces of a shattered wooden log, taking the bridge builder by surprise. In front of his very eyes, Kakashi landed beside them, his typical smile on his face and with nary a hair out of place. Well done, guys. You all did amazing. Naruto, Sasuke, good job on taking down those two and keeping them alive. Sakura, well done for protecting our client. But you. The pink-haired girl gave her teacher a relieved smile. Kakashi-sensei, you're all right. Sasuke turned to his blonde teammate with an annoyed expression on his face. Oi, what's up with you? It's not like you to freeze up in a fight. Naruto stared down at his hand with a frown. I'm not sure. This never happened before. His chain had disappeared against his will. Even now, he could feel his chakra fluctuate strangely. It was as if it had a mind of its own. Naru, too. His eyes widened as he spun around. All color had disappeared from the world. The sky, the trees, the ground, everything had become black and white. What's going on? He trailed off as he turned to look at his teammates. Sakura was sitting on the ground, her back resting against a tree. Her clothes were stained red, countless cuts littered her body. A large amount of blood gushed out of a large wound on the side of her neck. Her eyes were open, lifeless, staring at the grass that was now dyed red. Sakura. A loud, agonized scream drew his attention. Somebody was on fire next to her, rolling, trashing around in an attempt to put the flames out. His body was blackened by the fatal burns, his face almost unrecognizable. Sasuke. He could do nothing but stare at the scene with horrified wide eyes. He took a step back and frantically looked around. Kakashi. Where the hell was Kakashi-sensei? How could he have let this happen to his students? He shakily raised a hand forward, as if he was attempting to reach out to them. But before he could do anything, a pair of hands clasped his outstretched one. Color returned to the world as pink hair obstructed his vision. Sakura looked at him with worry on her face, her previous fatal injuries nowhere to be found. Naruto. Are you okay? Sakura. He muttered in shock. Am I okay? You. He looked behind her and saw Kakashi and Sasuke also looking at him in various degrees of concern. He attempted to calm his breathing and slowly pulled his hand out of the girl's grasp. I'm fine. Sakura, however, looked unconvinced. You sure? Were you grazed by one of their attacks? Their gauntlets seemed to be laced with poison. Naruto quickly shook his head. No, I didn't, sorry, I just thought I saw something but, it was just my imagination. Kakashi gave Naruto a once-over before shrugging and turning around. Alright, we're going to interrogate one of them. They should be able to tell us just who else is after us. Tazuna, you have a lot of explaining to do as well. Eek. Tazuna squeaked in fear. Sakura gave one last worried look towards Naruto before turning around and following after Kakashi. The blonde took in a deep breath and looked up at the bright blue sky. He didn't know what this meant, but he didn't like it. These guys are Chunins from Kurigakure. Why would they be coming after us, so close to Konoha territory? I thought for sure that we killed you. Did you already know that we were here? Kakashi lazily looked over to Maizu, the one that was still conscious and covered in burn marks. On a sunny day like this when it hasn't rained in weeks, a water puddle looks very out of place. Why did you let these brats fight if you already knew that? Tazuna asked. Because I wanted to see who their target was. What do you mean? Tazuna nervously replied. Did they come all the way here to kill a few Konoha ninja? Or were they after someone else, maybe, somebody who's hired protection from someone? Tazuna gulped nervously as Kakashi continued. You see, we were hired to protect you from normal thugs or thieves. As such, the mission was marked as AC rank, and you received fresh genin in return. Kakashi's eye turned cold as the temperature suddenly dropped. Tell me, what do you think would happen when inexperienced kids faced trained and dangerous killers? Tazuna shivered as Kakashi took a step forward, causing him to back away. If it was known that ninjas were after you, this mission would have been a B rank, or maybe even an A rank. I am sure you had your reasons, but this causes problems for us. And I don't take kindly to people that attempt to put my students in danger. So, is this mission too soon for us? Sakura asked in worry. I'm sorry, Tazuna said and closed his eyes in resignation. It's true, yes, I am being targeted. By a tyrant named Getu. Getu, the shipping magnate. He's said to be one of the wealthiest men alive. Yes, officially, he runs a large shipping company. But, he's part of a large underground business. He sells drugs and illegal items to shady people and uses ninjas and gang members to take over countries. He's a very bad man. Through money and violence, he took control of the country's shipping industry. Getu has a monopoly on all business traffic in the country. The only thing he has to fear now is the completion of the bridge. So, with the bridge in place, you'd be able to then trade with other countries. Kakashi confirmed. What stops Getu from just blowing up the bridge once it's built? Sasuke asked aloud. It's another avenue for him to extort money from. Naruto said suddenly. Tazuna nodded. That's right, blow up a bridge, the bridge can be rebuilt. Kill a person and he stays dead. The bridge would end up being Getu's symbol. He wants complete control over Wave. By seizing the bridge, he can directly dictate what crosses it and apply any tolls that he'd want. Blowing it up would make no sense for him, as the bridge means a massive influx of cash, ripe for Getu's taking. The team remained silent as they processed the information. What should they do? On one hand, if they returned home they'd probably send this man to his death and let Getu turn Wave Country into ruins. On the other hand, they could continue on and help him, thus saving it and its villagers. But were they ready for that? But don't worry about it. If I die, my cute 10-year-old grandson will only cry for a few days. Oh yeah, and my daughter will live a sad life hating Leaf Village Ninja forever. Quote. The last time Naruto went on a C-rank mission, they were suddenly ambushed by a psychotic Sannin. And now, here they were walking into dangerous territory once again. Naruto looked over to his teammates as a bead of sweat trailed down the side of his head. He didn't think he'd be able to take it if the same thing happened again. Sasuke met his eyes and gave him a confident smirk. What's with that look? You afraid, Mr. Scaredy Cat? As if, Naruto replied. Kakashi turned around to look at each of his students. Well, what do you guys think? This is your decision. I say we do it. Surprisingly, it was Sakura who said that. She seemed nervous, but her mind was set. We can't just leave this country to die like that. I agree. Sasuke added with a nod. Kakashi turned towards his final student, who still seemed to be debating it, though Kakashi couldn't exactly blame him. After a short pause though, Naruto looked up and met Kakashi's eyes. Let's do it. Kakashi's eye curved up. Well, if it's all the same for you all, then this mission is officially a go. However, he said quickly before Tazuna could celebrate and pointed a finger at him. Once the bridge is finished and Getu is gone, you will pay the Leaf Village in full. Yes sir. Kakashi nodded and continued his walk towards Wave. Well, what are we waiting for? Hey, you're not just gonna leave us here are you? Maizu called out from his tied-up position, but was promptly ignored by the rest of the team. Tazuna followed after Kakashi, and the three genin looked at each other. Yeah, whatever this mission had in store, they would be able to handle it. They were ready for this. That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it then like, share and subscribe for the next video as it's going to be more interesting, and also check out my other playlists, hope you would like them too.